The galaxy trembles under the thunderous advance of countless green-skinned warriors, their crude weapons blazing, and their guttural war cries echoing across star systems. Yet few among the Imperium's scholars truly comprehend the ancient horror they face. The Orks are not merely another xenospecies driven by territorial expansion or resource acquisition. They are the devolved remnants of a weapon so terrible that it nearly tore reality itself apart during the galaxy's most catastrophic conflict. 65 million years ago, during the epoch known as the War in Heaven, the Old Ones faced extinction at the hands of the Necrontyr and their star-devouring gods, the Catan. These ancient beings, masters of psychic manipulation and biological engineering, had already seeded the galaxy with various warrior races to serve as their soldiers. The Eldar, with their natural psychic gifts, served as commanders and specialists. But as the war intensified and the very fabric of reality began to tear under the strain of such cosmic violence, the Old Ones required something more brutal, more resilient, and utterly without mercy. From their bio-laboratories emerged the Krork, towering warriors that dwarfed even the largest modern orcs. These creatures stood 12 feet tall at minimum, their massive frames encased in sophisticated biomechanical armor that grew from their own flesh. Unlike their degenerate descendants, the Krork possessed advanced intelligence and tactical acumen that rivaled the greatest military minds. They wielded weapons of incredible sophistication, energy-based armaments that could punch through Necron-living metal with contemptuous ease. Most terrifying of all, they were designed as a self-replicating weapon system, spreading across worlds through their unique reproductive cycle without requiring the Old Ones' direct intervention. The Krork's psychic potential far exceeded that of modern orcs, allowing them to manifest devastating reality, altering effects through pure collective will. Entire Necron tomb complexes would malfunction simply because enough Krork believed their weapons should pierce any armor. Their war machines, grown rather than built, incorporated living metal and energy manipulation systems that modern orc mechboys can barely comprehend, let alone replicate. These biomechanical monstrosities could repair themselves mid-battle, adapt to enemy tactics in real time, and coordinate across vast interstellar distances through their psychic gestalt consciousness. When the War in Heaven finally ended with the Old Ones' extinction and the Catan's imprisonment, the Krork found themselves without purpose or guidance. Over millions of years, lacking the constant warfare and psychic stimulation that had maintained their advanced state, they gradually devolved. The sophisticated biotechnology integrated into their bodies simplified into crude cybernetic implants. Their towering stature diminished to the 7-foot average of modern orcs. Most critically, their intelligence degraded from strategic brilliance to the simple, violence-focused mentality that characterizes the species today. This devolution was not uniform across all Krork populations. Some retained more of their ancient capabilities than others, explaining the occasional appearance of unusually large and cunning orc leaders. The legendary beast that nearly conquered Terra in the 32nd millennium stood nearly as tall as the original Krork and demonstrated tactical sophistication that shocked Imperial commanders. Such throwbacks suggest that the genetic potential for their original form remains locked within orc DNA, requiring only the right conditions to manifest. The orc reproductive system represents perhaps the most insidious aspect of their species' design. Unlike conventional biological organisms that rely on sexual reproduction, orcs are essentially mobile fungal colonies. Each individual orc carries within their body countless microscopic spores that are constantly released into the environment through respiration, perspiration, and bodily functions. These spores are remarkably resilient, capable of surviving in vacuum, extreme temperatures, and even moderate radiation exposure for extended periods. When an orc dies, whether through violence or natural causes, their body undergoes rapid decomposition that releases millions of additional spores into the surrounding area. These spores then begin the complex process of establishing what Imperial xenobiologists term the orcoid ecosystem. The initial phase involves the germination of various fungal growths that serve multiple functions within this biological network. Some fungi break down organic matter to create nutrient-rich soil, while others produce the basic foodstuffs that will sustain the emerging orc population. The most crucial component of this ecosystem is the spawning pools, shallow depressions where the accumulated spores undergo their transformation into recognizable orchid life forms. The process begins with squigs, the simplest orchid organisms that serve as both food source and basic industrial components. These creatures range from tiny, edible varieties to massive predatory beasts used in warfare. Snotlings emerge next, diminutive creatures with just enough intelligence to tend the fungal gardens and perform basic maintenance tasks within the growing settlement. Gretchen represent the next evolutionary step, possessing sufficient intelligence to operate simple machinery and serve as laborers for their larger cousins. These creatures, while cowardly and individually weak, form the backbone of orc society by handling tasks that require more finesse than an orc's massive hands can manage. They maintain weapons, sort salvage, and operate the crude but effective manufacturing systems that keep orc warbands equipped. The emergence of full-sized orcs marks the ecosystem's maturity. These warriors burst from the spawning pools, already possessing basic knowledge of warfare, technology, and their place in orc society. This genetic programming eliminates the vulnerability period that plagues other species' offspring, as newborn orcs are immediately capable of defending themselves and contributing to the warband's strength. The knowledge they possess is not learned but inherited, passed down through the genetic memory encoded in their spores. This reproductive system ensures that orc populations are virtually impossible to completely eliminate. Even if every visible orc on a world is killed, the spores they have released will eventually give rise to new populations. Imperial exterminatus protocols exist partly because conventional cleansing operations often fail to prevent orc resurgence. Worlds thought purged have erupted in new Waaghs decades or even centuries later, as dormant spores finally reach critical mass. The psychic phenomenon known as Waaagh energy represents the most dangerous aspect of orc biology, transforming what would otherwise be a manageable Xenos threat into a galaxy-spanning nightmare. Every orc possesses latent psychic abilities, though they remain largely unconscious of this power. Individual orcs generate minimal psychic emanations, but when large numbers gather together, their collective unconscious creates a gestalt field of staggering potency. This psychic field operates on the principle of collective belief made manifest. If enough orcs believe something should work, reality bends to accommodate their expectations. Orc vehicles that should collapse under their own weight continue functioning because their operators believe they should. Weapons cobbled together from scrap metal and wishful thinking fire with devastating accuracy because the wielders expect them to work. Red vehicles move faster than identical blue ones simply because orcs associate red with speed. The Waaagh field grows exponentially stronger as more orcs join together. A small warband might generate enough psychic energy to keep their ramshackle equipment functional, but a full Waaagh can alter fundamental physical laws across entire star systems. Orc weirdboys, the rare individuals who can consciously channel this energy, often struggle to control the immense power flowing through them. Many explode in spectacular psychic detonations, their bodies unable to contain the raw force of thousands of orc minds focused on destruction. During major Waaghs, this psychic field can affect enemy forces as well. Imperial Guard units have reported weapon malfunctions, communication failures, and equipment breakdowns that coincide precisely with orc advances. Some scholars theorize that the orcs' unconscious belief in their own superiority actively undermines enemy morale and effectiveness, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy of victory. The field also influences orc behavior and development. Successful orc leaders grow larger and more intelligent as they absorb more Waaagh energy, eventually becoming the massive warbosses that lead the greatest invasions. This growth is not merely physical but intellectual, as the psychic field enhances their tactical thinking and strategic planning abilities. The most successful warbosses can coordinate multiple clan operations across several worlds, their enhanced consciousness capable of managing complexity that would overwhelm lesser orcs. Genetic programming drives every aspect of orc existence, creating a species that exists purely for warfare. From the moment they emerge from spawning pools, orcs understand their role in the greater ecosystem of violence that defines their civilization. This programming manifests in several distinct behavioral patterns that ensure the species' continued expansion and survival. The primary drive is an insatiable hunger for combat that goes far beyond mere aggression. Orks do not fight simply to acquire territory or resources. They fight because violence is their natural state. Extended periods without conflict cause physical and psychological deterioration in orc populations. Their muscles atrophy, their technology degrades, and their social structures collapse into petty squabbling. Only through constant warfare do they maintain their peak condition and organizational coherence. This programming includes an instinctive understanding of military hierarchy based purely on physical dominance. Orks automatically defer to larger, stronger individuals, creating a natural command structure that requires no formal training or indoctrination. Leadership challenges are settled through brutal combat, ensuring that only the most capable warriors rise to positions of authority. This system eliminates the political infighting and succession crises that plague other species, as orc leadership transitions are swift and decisive. The genetic programming also includes specialized knowledge that manifests based on individual orcs' roles within their society. Boyz possess an intuitive understanding of technology that allows them to create functional weapons and vehicles from the most unlikely materials. Boyz know enough battlefield medicine to keep wounded orcs fighting, despite having no formal medical training. Boyz can channel psychic energy without understanding the theoretical principles that govern such powers. Most insidiously, this programming includes a form of species-wide strategic thinking that operates below conscious awareness. Orc migrations and Waaagh directions often follow patterns that maximize conflict and resource acquisition, even when individual leaders believe they are making random decisions. Worlds targeted by orc invasions frequently possess strategic value that becomes apparent only after conquest, suggesting that some form of collective intelligence guides their expansion. The programming ensures that orcs never develop beyond their current state of aggressive expansion. Unlike other species that might eventually seek peace or focus on cultural development, orcs are genetically incapable of transcending their violent nature. They represent a perfect weapon system, self-replicating, self-maintaining, and utterly dedicated to the destruction of all other life forms. Every victory feeds their growth, every defeat scatters spores to seed new conflicts, and every moment of peace only builds pressure for the next explosive expansion. This relentless cycle has continued for millions of years since the War in Heaven's End, turning the orcs into a permanent fixture of galactic warfare. They serve as a constant pressure valve, preventing any single faction from achieving total dominance while simultaneously weakening all potential competitors. Whether this represents the Old One's final victory or their greatest mistake remains a question that may never be answered, as the green tide continues its eternal advance across the stars. The transformation from scattered orc warbands into a galaxy-threatening Waaagh follows patterns as predictable as they are terrifying. Understanding these mechanisms requires examining the brutal meritocracy that governs orc society, where leadership emerges not through political maneuvering or inherited authority, but through the simple application of overwhelming violence. This system, encoded in their genetic programming since the days of the ancient Krork, ensures that only the most capable warriors rise to command positions while maintaining the aggressive momentum necessary for sustained expansion. The emergence of a warboss represents the crucial tipping point where individual ambition transforms into species-wide catastrophe. Unlike human military hierarchies that rely on formal promotion structures, orc leadership operates on the fundamental principle that might makes right. Any orc can potentially become a warboss, provided they possess the physical strength and cunning necessary to defeat all challengers. This process typically begins when an individual orc demonstrates exceptional combat prowess, whether through defeating a particularly dangerous enemy, surviving impossible odds, or simply growing larger than their peers through accumulated Waaagh energy. The aspiring warboss must first establish dominance within their immediate warband through a series of increasingly violent confrontations. These challenges rarely follow formal dueling protocols, instead erupting spontaneously when subordinates sense weakness or opportunity. The combats are invariably brutal affairs conducted with whatever weapons come to hand, from massive choppas and crude shooters to bare fists and improvised clubs. Victory requires not merely defeating the challenger, but doing so in such a spectacular fashion that other potential rivals reconsider their ambitions. Successful warbosses exhibit a combination of raw physical power and tactical cunning that sets them apart from common orcs. They possess an intuitive understanding of warfare that allows them to coordinate complex multi-unit operations while maintaining the aggressive momentum that keeps their followers engaged. Their enhanced size, a direct result of absorbing Waaagh energy from successful campaigns, commands automatic respect from smaller orcs while providing the physical capability to back up their authority with devastating violence. The growth process that transforms ordinary orcs into towering warbosses represents one of the species' most remarkable adaptations. As these leaders achieve greater success, their bodies begin incorporating additional Waaagh energy, causing them to increase in both size and intelligence. A typical warboss stands 8 to 9 feet tall, with some exceptional individuals reaching heights of 12 feet or more. Their musculature expands proportionally, allowing them to wield weapons that would require entire squads of human soldiers to operate effectively. This physical transformation comes with corresponding mental development. Successful warbosses demonstrate strategic thinking capabilities that far exceed those of ordinary orcs, planning campaigns across multiple star systems and coordinating the actions of millions of followers. They develop an almost supernatural ability to identify weaknesses in enemy defenses, exploit logistical vulnerabilities, and time their attacks for maximum psychological impact. The most successful warbosses can maintain operational awareness across dozens of simultaneous conflicts, their enhanced consciousness capable of processing tactical information that would overwhelm lesser minds. The establishment of a warboss's authority extends beyond mere personal combat to encompass the management of increasingly complex military organizations. They must balance the competing demands of various orc clans, each with their own cultural traditions and tactical preferences, while maintaining the aggressive momentum necessary to prevent their forces from fragmenting. This requires a delicate understanding of orc psychology, knowing when to allow subordinates to engage in recreational violence and when to focus their energies on external targets. Supporting the warboss's military operations are the specialized Boyz, whose unique abilities provide the technical expertise necessary for sustained campaigns. These individuals represent genetic throwbacks to the ancient Orks' sophisticated understanding of technology and medicine, though their knowledge manifests in characteristically crude orc fashion. The three primary categories of Boyz each fill crucial roles within the Waagh's operational structure, their specialized skills complementing the raw violence that defines mainstream orc culture. Boyz serve as the technological backbone of any major Waaagh, their intuitive understanding of machinery allowing them to create functional weapons and vehicles from the most unlikely salvage materials. These individuals possess an almost mystical connection to mechanical systems, able to coax performance from equipment that should logically cease functioning. Their workshops, known as mech shops, represent chaotic amalgamations of half-completed projects, salvaged components, and experimental weapons that would horrify Imperial tech priests with their complete disregard for established engineering principles. The Boyz' knowledge operates on instinctual rather than theoretical levels. They understand that certain combinations of components will produce desired effects without comprehending the underlying scientific principles involved. This intuitive approach results in weapons and vehicles that function through a combination of crude engineering and psychic reinforcement from the Waaagh field. Boyz creations often incorporate salvaged Imperial technology, Eldar components, and even chaos artifacts, somehow managing to integrate these disparate elements into cohesive systems. Their most impressive achievements are the massive war machines that spearhead Waaagh assaults. Gargants, towering mechanical monstrosities that rival Imperial titans in size and firepower, represent the pinnacle of Boyz engineering. These walking fortresses incorporate dozens of weapon systems, crew compartments for hundreds of Orks, and enough armor plating to shrug off direct hits from orbital bombardment cannons. The construction process requires multiple mechboys working in coordination, their combined expertise guided by vague blueprints that exist more as suggestions than detailed specifications. Smaller mechboy projects include the various vehicles that provide Waaagh forces with mobility and fire support. Trucks, ramshackle transport vehicles capable of carrying entire squads of Orks across battlefield terrain, demonstrate the mechboy philosophy of functional simplicity. These vehicles prioritize speed and durability over comfort or safety, featuring exposed engines, minimal armor protection, and weapon mounts that allow passengers to contribute to firefights while in transit. War tracks and warboss provide fast attack capabilities, their lightweight construction and powerful engines allowing them to outflank enemy positions and strike at vulnerable targets. The relationship between mechboys and the Waaagh field creates a feedback loop that enhances their technological capabilities. As the psychic energy generated by large Ork gatherings intensifies, mechboy creations become increasingly effective, with weapons achieving greater accuracy and vehicles demonstrating improved performance. This psychic reinforcement allows Ork technology to function despite its apparent mechanical impossibility, creating weapons systems that Imperial engineers cannot replicate even when provided with detailed schematics. Painboys fulfill the medical and surgical requirements of Waaagh operations, though their methods would appall trained physicians from more civilized species. These specialists possess an instinctive understanding of Ork physiology that allows them to perform complex surgical procedures using improvised tools and salvaged medical equipment. Their primary responsibility involves keeping wounded Orks functional enough to continue fighting, often through the liberal application of crude cybernetic replacements and stimulant injections. The painboy approach to medicine emphasizes immediate battlefield effectiveness over long-term patient welfare. Wounded Orks receive whatever treatment will return them to combat readiness as quickly as possible, whether this involves crude surgical repairs, mechanical prosthetics, or chemical enhancement. Painboys maintain extensive collections of spare parts harvested from fallen comrades, creating stockpiles of replacement limbs, organs, and cybernetic components that can be installed as circumstances require. Their surgical procedures, conducted in ramshackle medical facilities that double as torture chambers, demonstrate a brutal pragmatism that prioritizes function over comfort. Painboys perform amputations with industrial cutting tools, install cybernetic implants using welding equipment, and administer anesthesia through blunt force trauma to the patient's skull. Despite these crude methods, their success rates remain surprisingly high, largely due to the remarkable resilience of Ork physiology and the psychic reinforcement provided by the patient's belief in the treatment's effectiveness. The cybernetic enhancements provided by painboys often exceed the capabilities of the original biological components they replace. Mechanical arms can crush ceramite armor plating, artificial legs provide enhanced speed and jumping capability, and replacement organs often demonstrate improved efficiency over their natural counterparts. These modifications are typically powered by small generators or battery packs that require regular maintenance, creating a dependency relationship between enhanced Orks and their painboy benefactors. Weirdboys represent the most dangerous and unpredictable category of oddboys, their ability to consciously channel Waaagh energy making them invaluable assets and constant threats to their own forces. These individuals serve as living conduits for the psychic power generated by large Ork gatherings, their enhanced sensitivity to the Waaagh field allowing them to manifest devastating supernatural effects. However, this same sensitivity makes them vulnerable to psychic overload, with many weirdboys eventually succumbing to spectacular explosive deaths when the energy flowing through them exceeds their biological capacity to contain it. The manifestation of weirdboy powers follows patterns that reflect the violent nature of Ork society. Their abilities typically focus on direct damage dealing, with psychic lightning bolts, force blasts, and telekinetic attacks representing their most common offensive capabilities. These powers draw directly from the aggressive emotions of surrounding orcs, becoming more potent as combat intensity increases. During major battles, experienced weirdboys can channel enough energy to level buildings, vaporize enemy vehicles, or tear holes in reality itself. The unpredictable nature of weirdboy powers makes them as dangerous to their allies as to their enemies. Psychic backlash can manifest as uncontrolled energy discharges that incinerate nearby orcs, spatial distortions that teleport friendly units into enemy positions, or temporal anomalies that trap entire squads in accelerated time loops. These incidents are generally accepted as unavoidable casualties of warfare, with surviving orcs viewing spectacular weirdboy explosions as entertaining diversions rather than tragic losses. The clan system that organizes orc society provides the cultural framework within which Waaagh operations develop and expand. Each of the 6 major clans maintains distinct traditions, tactical preferences, and cultural characteristics that influence their contributions to larger military campaigns. These differences create natural specializations that allow warbosses to employ various clans in roles that maximize their effectiveness, while maintaining the competitive tensions that drive orc society forward. The Goths represent the purest expression of orc martial culture, their obsession with close combat and personal glory making them the shock troops of choice for frontal assaults. These orcs prize physical strength above all other qualities, measuring success through the number of enemies killed in hand-to-hand combat rather than tactical objectives achieved. Goth warriors favor massive melee weapons, with choppas, power claws, and chain weapons representing their preferred armaments. Their black and white color scheme reflects their straightforward approach to warfare, with no subtlety or deception involved in their tactical thinking. Goth society revolves around constant competition to determine who among them deserves recognition as the ultimate warrior. These contests take various forms, from formal dueling tournaments to spontaneous brawls that erupt over minor disputes. The clan's leadership structure reflects this competitive culture, with positions of authority going to those who can defeat all challengers in single combat. Goth knobs typically achieve their status through spectacular displays of violence, often involving the defeat of particularly dangerous enemies or the successful completion of seemingly impossible combat challenges. The Evil Sunts clan embodies the orc fascination with speed and mobility, their red-painted vehicles and equipment reflecting their belief that red objects move faster than those of other colors. These orcs specialize in fast attack tactics, using their superior mobility to outflank enemy positions and strike at vulnerable targets. Evil Sunts warbands typically feature large numbers of bikes, buggies, and other fast-moving vehicles, with their warriors preferring hit-and-run tactics over prolonged engagements. Evil Sunts culture celebrates reckless speed and daredevil stunts, with clan members competing to achieve the most spectacular crashes and near-death experiences. Their vehicles are typically modified for maximum performance rather than reliability, featuring oversized engines, nitrous injection systems, and other enhancements that increase speed at the expense of safety. The clan's mechanics, known as speed freaks, possess an intuitive understanding of vehicle performance that allows them to coax incredible acceleration from even the most ramshackle machines. The Bad Moons distinguish themselves through their obsession with wealth and firepower, their yellow color scheme reflecting their belief that having the biggest and most expensive weapons demonstrates superior status. These orcs possess an unusual talent for accumulating resources, whether through successful raids, shrewd trading, or the exploitation of other clans' military victories. Bad Moon's warbands typically feature heavy weapons specialists and well-equipped infantry units, their superior armament providing significant advantages in prolonged firefights. Bad Moon's society operates on principles of conspicuous consumption, with clan members competing to display the most impressive collections of weapons, armor, and other valuable items. Their leaders, known as Flash Gits, typically carry multiple weapons and wear elaborate outfits decorated with trophies from defeated enemies. The clan's merchants and traders, known as mechs, possess an unusual understanding of economics that allows them to profit from the constant warfare that defines orc society. The Death Skulls clan represents the scavenger culture that allows Ork society to maintain its technological base despite lacking formal manufacturing capabilities. These Orks specialize in salvage operations and equipment recovery, their blue color scheme believed to provide good luck in finding valuable items. Death Skulls warbands typically feature eclectic collections of salvaged equipment, with individual warriors carrying weapons and armor pieces from dozens of different sources. Death Skulls culture celebrates successful scavenging and the creative repurposing of salvaged materials. Clan members take pride in their ability to find useful items in the most unlikely places, whether looting battlefields, raiding enemy supply depots, or trading with other clans. Their mechboys are particularly skilled at integrating disparate components into functional systems, creating hybrid weapons and vehicles that combine the best features of multiple technological traditions. The Blood Axes clan occupies a unique position within Ork society due to their willingness to adopt tactics and equipment from other species, particularly humans. These Orks have developed an appreciation for military discipline and coordinated tactics that sets them apart from their more chaotic brethren. Blood Axes warbands often feature organized infantry formations, artillery support, and even crude attempts at camouflage and stealth operations. Blood Axes culture reflects their exposure to human military traditions, with clan members adopting ranks, uniforms, and ceremonial practices borrowed from Imperial Guard units they have encountered. However, these adoptions are filtered through Ork sensibilities, resulting in military traditions that emphasize violence and competition while maintaining the aggressive spirit that defines their species. Blood Axes leaders often carry human weapons and wear modified Imperial equipment, viewing these items as symbols of their tactical sophistication. The Snakebites clan represents the most conservative element of Ork society, their rejection of advanced technology in favor of traditional weapons and tactics, reflecting their belief that modern innovations have weakened their species. These Orks prefer simple, reliable equipment that can be maintained without specialized knowledge, viewing the complex creations of other clans as unnecessary complications. Snakebites warbands typically feature large numbers of infantry armed with basic weapons, supported by various squig creatures that serve as mounts, weapons, and food sources. Snakebites culture emphasizes the connection between Orks and their biological origins, with clan members maintaining extensive squig herds and fungal gardens that provide food and raw materials. Their leaders, known as big bosses, typically achieve their positions through demonstrations of personal toughness rather than tactical brilliance, often involving the defeat of dangerous squig creatures or survival of extreme environmental hazards. The clan's shamans, known as weirdboys, often possess deeper connections to the Waaagh field than their counterparts in other clans, their traditional practices allowing them to channel psychic energy more effectively. The interaction between these various clans within a growing Waaagh creates a complex dynamic that drives the expansion process forward through competitive pressure and mutual reinforcement. As successful operations attract additional followers, the growing concentration of Orks generates increased Waaagh energy that enhances the effectiveness of all participants. This creates a positive feedback loop where military success breeds further success, drawing in ever larger numbers of Orks from across the galaxy. The snowball effect that characterizes Waaagh growth operates through multiple mechanisms that compound to create exponentially increasing military capability. Initial successes attract attention from nearby Ork populations, who abandon their current activities to join what appears to be a promising campaign. These new recruits bring their own equipment, followers, and specialized skills, adding to the Waagh's overall capability while increasing the psychic field strength that makes all Ork equipment more effective. The transformation from ambitious Nob to undisputed warboss represents perhaps the most violent ascension process in the galaxy, where leadership is earned through the systematic elimination of all potential rivals. This brutal meritocracy ensures that only the most cunning and physically dominant Orks achieve positions of supreme authority, creating leaders whose combination of raw strength and tactical acumen can coordinate the actions of millions of followers across multiple star systems. The process begins when an individual orc demonstrates exceptional capabilities that set them apart from their peers, whether through surviving impossible odds, defeating particularly dangerous enemies, or simply growing larger than their contemporaries through accumulated Waaagh energy absorption. The initial stages of warboss emergence typically occur within established warband hierarchies, where ambitious knobs begin challenging their superiors for control of increasingly valuable resources and territory. These confrontations follow no formal protocols or ceremonial traditions, instead erupting spontaneously when opportunities present themselves, or when the current leadership shows signs of weakness. The challenges themselves are invariably lethal affairs, conducted with whatever weapons the participants prefer, from massive two-handed choppas capable of cleaving through power armor to crude but effective shoot combinations that can punch through vehicle plating. Victory in these succession battles requires more than mere physical strength, though size and combat prowess remain essential qualifications. Successful warboss candidates demonstrate an intuitive understanding of orc psychology that allows them to anticipate their opponent's tactics while exploiting weaknesses in their fighting styles. They must also possess the charisma necessary to inspire loyalty among potential followers, convincing other orcs that joining their cause offers better prospects for violence and loot than remaining with current leadership structures. The defeated challenger's fate serves as a powerful demonstration of the victor's capabilities, with particularly spectacular executions becoming legendary tales that spread throughout local orc populations. These stories serve multiple purposes within orc society, simultaneously establishing the new leader's reputation while warning potential rivals about the consequences of unsuccessful challenges. The most effective warboss candidates ensure that their victories become widely known, often through the testimony of surviving witnesses who spread accounts of the battle's brutality and decisiveness. Once established as the dominant force within their immediate territory, aspiring warbosses must expand their influence by absorbing neighboring warbands through conquest or intimidation. This expansion phase requires careful balance between aggressive action and strategic patience, as premature attacks against well-established rivals can result in catastrophic defeats that scatter their followers to other leaders. Successful candidates identify vulnerable targets whose defeat will demonstrate their growing power, while avoiding confrontations that might expose their own weaknesses to opportunistic challengers. The absorption process typically involves formal challenges between the rival leaders, with the victor claiming control over the loser's entire organization. These duels represent the culmination of weeks or months of posturing and preliminary skirmishing, as both sides attempt to demonstrate their superior strength while gathering intelligence about their opponent's capabilities. The actual combat often takes place before assembled crowds of followers from both factions, creating a spectacle that serves to legitimize the outcome while providing entertainment for the watching orcs. However, victory in single combat does not automatically guarantee the loyalty of the defeated warband's members. Newly conquered orcs must be convinced that their new leader offers better prospects for violence and advancement than their previous arrangements. This requires the victorious warboss to demonstrate not only personal combat prowess, but also the organizational skills necessary to coordinate larger military operations. Failed integration attempts often result in fragmentation, as dissatisfied elements break away to form independent warbands or seek service with alternative leaders. The constant threat of challenges from ambitious subordinates creates a perpetual state of tension within warboss organizations that serves to maintain the aggressive edge necessary for sustained expansion. Even the most successful leaders must remain vigilant against potential rivals, as any sign of weakness or complacency invites immediate challenges from knobs seeking advancement. This pressure ensures that warbosses continue growing in size and capability throughout their careers, as the Waaagh energy generated by successful campaigns enhances their physical and mental attributes. The challenge system operates through informal networks of reputation and opportunity that allow ambitious knobs to identify potential targets while avoiding suicidal confrontations with obviously superior opponents. Experienced challengers typically observe their intended targets for extended periods, looking for signs of injury, distraction, or declining performance that might provide tactical advantages. They also gather information about the target's fighting style, preferred weapons, and known weaknesses through conversations with former opponents and careful observation of training sessions. The timing of challenges often reflects broader strategic considerations within the Waagh's operational tempo. Ambitious knobs frequently wait until after major battles, when their targets may be wounded or exhausted from combat, or during periods of relative inactivity when boredom and frustration make other orcs more receptive to leadership changes. Conversely, challenges during active campaigns are generally discouraged, as they disrupt operational effectiveness and may result in intervention from higher-ranking leaders who prioritize military objectives over internal politics. The legendary warbosses, whose names echo through Imperial military archives, represent the pinnacle of orc leadership evolution, their achievements serving as inspiration for countless aspiring successors, while demonstrating the species' potential for coordinated destruction on a galactic scale. These individuals transcended the typical limitations of orc society through combinations of exceptional personal capability, strategic vision, and the ability to maintain unity among traditionally fractious clan elements for extended periods. Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka stands as perhaps the most notorious example of orc leadership potential, his campaigns against the Imperium spanning decades and encompassing hundreds of worlds across multiple sectors. His rise to prominence began during the Second War for Armageddon, where his tactical innovations and personal charisma united disparate orc factions into a coherent military force capable of challenging Imperial Guard and Space Marine defenders. His ability to coordinate simultaneous operations across multiple continents while maintaining the aggressive momentum necessary to prevent factional fragmentation demonstrated leadership capabilities that rival those of the greatest human commanders. Thraka's physical transformation during his career illustrates the enhancement process that affects successful warboss candidates. Initial encounters described him as a large, but otherwise typical orc leader, distinguished primarily by his tactical acumen and ability to inspire followers. However, successive campaigns saw him grow to enormous proportions, his enhanced size reflecting the accumulation of Waaagh energy from millions of devoted followers. By the time of the Third War for Armageddon, he had become a towering figure whose presence alone could rally entire armies, while his enhanced intelligence allowed him to outmaneuver Imperial strategists who had spent lifetimes studying conventional warfare. His equipment reflected his status as the preeminent orc leader of his era, featuring custom mega armor that incorporated advanced life support systems and weapon mounts capable of supporting multiple heavy weapons simultaneously. His signature power claw, a massive mechanical appendage that could crush Space Marine Terminator armor with casual ease, became a symbol of his personal combat prowess while serving practical battlefield functions. The armor's construction demonstrated the peak of orc engineering capability, combining salvaged Imperial technology with innovative mechboy modifications to create a system that enhanced his already formidable natural abilities. Warlord Snagrod earned his fearsome reputation through the systematic destruction of the Crimson Fists chapter, his Badab war campaigns demonstrating the devastating effectiveness of well-coordinated orc assault tactics against prepared Space Marine defenses. His rise to power followed the classic pattern of challenge and conquest, but his subsequent operations showed unusual strategic sophistication that allowed him to exploit weaknesses in Imperial defensive doctrine. The assault on the Crimson Fist's fortress monastery on Rin's world became a masterclass in combined arms warfare, with Snagrod coordinating artillery bombardments, armored assaults, and infantry infiltrations to overwhelm defenders who had successfully repelled orc attacks for centuries. His personal combat style emphasized the use of massive two-handed weapons that could cleave through multiple opponents with single strikes, his enhanced strength allowing him to wield equipment that would require power assistance for smaller orcs to operate effectively. The psychological impact of his battlefield presence proved as valuable as his tactical contributions, with Imperial defenders reporting decreased morale and increased casualty rates whenever he personally led assault formations. His eventual defeat required the combined efforts of multiple Space Marine chapters, illustrating the threat level that exceptional warboss candidates can represent to Imperial security. Warboss Scarfang distinguished himself through innovative siege warfare techniques that allowed his forces to breach fortifications that had withstood conventional attacks for decades. His campaigns in the Segmentum Solar demonstrated unusual patience and methodical planning, with his forces conducting extended siege operations that gradually wore down Defender, resolved through constant pressure and psychological warfare. His ability to maintain warband cohesion during prolonged static operations required exceptional leadership skills, as most Ork forces fragment when denied opportunities for regular combat and advancement. His tactical innovations included the development of specialized siege equipment that combined traditional Ork engineering with salvaged Imperial technology to create hybrid systems capable of breaching even the strongest defensive positions. These devices, constructed by teams of mechboys working under his direct supervision, represented significant advances in Ork military capability that influenced subsequent siege operations throughout the galaxy. His personal involvement in equipment design and battlefield testing demonstrated the enhanced intellectual capabilities that characterize the most successful warboss leaders. The role of directing Waaagh energy represents perhaps the most crucial aspect of warboss leadership, requiring an intuitive understanding of the psychic forces that bind Ork society together while maintaining the delicate balance between unity and the competitive tensions that drive their species forward. This responsibility extends far beyond simple military command to encompass the management of psychic phenomena that can alter reality itself when properly focused and directed. The Waaagh field generated by large Ork gatherings responds directly to the emotional states and expectations of the participating individuals, with the warboss serving as the primary focal point for these collective energies. Their enhanced psychic sensitivity, developed through exposure to increasing concentrations of Waaagh energy, allows them to sense the mood and intentions of their followers while influencing the field's manifestations through conscious will and unconscious expectation. This creates a feedback loop where successful leadership enhances the field's effectiveness, which in turn makes subsequent operations more likely to succeed. The practical applications of this psychic direction manifest in numerous ways throughout Waaagh operations. Equipment that should logically fail continues functioning because the warboss and their followers believe it should work, with the collective faith making mechanical impossibilities into battlefield realities. Weapons achieve greater accuracy and penetration when wielded by Orks who trust in their leader's tactical judgment, while vehicles demonstrate improved performance when their operators believe they are participating in a successful campaign. Maintaining unity among fractious clan elements requires constant attention to the competing interests and cultural traditions that define Ork society, with successful warbosses demonstrating remarkable skill in balancing these tensions while channeling them toward productive military objectives. Each clan brings distinct capabilities and expectations to Waaagh operations, creating potential conflicts that can fragment the entire organization if not properly managed. The warboss must ensure that all participants receive sufficient opportunities for violence and advancement, while preventing internal disputes from escalating into open warfare. The fear and respect that successful warbosses inspire among their followers operates through multiple mechanisms that reinforce their authority while maintaining the aggressive spirit necessary for sustained expansion. Physical intimidation plays an obvious role, with their enhanced size and combat prowess serving as constant reminders of the consequences of disobedience or challenge. However, the most effective leaders also demonstrate the tactical competence necessary to achieve military objectives while minimizing unnecessary casualties among their own forces. Respect within Ork society is earned through consistent demonstration of superior capability in the areas that matter most to their followers. This includes not only personal combat prowess, but also the ability to identify profitable targets, coordinate complex operations, and ensure that successful campaigns result in adequate distribution of loot and advancement opportunities. Warbosses who fail to meet these expectations quickly find themselves facing challenges from subordinates who believe they can provide better leadership. The equipment carried by successful warbosses serves multiple functions beyond simple combat effectiveness, with their weapons and armor serving as symbols of status and achievement while providing the practical capabilities necessary for battlefield leadership. The construction and maintenance of this equipment requires the combined efforts of the most skilled mechboys and painboys available, creating unique systems that reflect both the leader's personal preferences and the technological capabilities of their organization. Mega armor represents the ultimate expression of Ork protective technology, combining massive armor plates with integrated weapon systems and life support equipment to create walking fortresses capable of surviving direct hits from heavy weapons. The construction process requires months of work by specialized teams, with individual components custom fitted to accommodate the warboss's enhanced physique while providing maximum protection and mobility. The armor's distinctive appearance, typically decorated with trophies from defeated enemies and clan symbols, serves to identify the wearer while intimidating opponents who recognize the significance of such equipment. Power claws epitomize the Ork preference for close combat weapons that emphasize raw destructive capability over finesse or precision. These massive mechanical appendages generate tremendous crushing force through hydraulic or pneumatic systems, allowing their wielders to tear through vehicle armor and fortification walls with devastating effectiveness. The psychological impact of these weapons often proves as valuable as their practical applications, with enemy forces frequently breaking formation when confronted by warbosses wielding such obviously lethal equipment. The custom wargear that distinguishes individual warbosses reflects their personal combat preferences while demonstrating the resources and technical expertise available to their organizations. These items often incorporate salvaged technology from defeated enemies, creating hybrid systems that combine the best features of multiple technological traditions. The most successful leaders maintain extensive collections of such equipment, allowing them to adapt their loadout to specific tactical situations while displaying their accumulated achievements to followers and rivals alike. The foundation of every Waaagh rests upon the countless Ork boys who form the backbone of greenskin military might. These warriors emerge from spawning pools already possessing the fundamental knowledge necessary for warfare, their genetic programming providing instant familiarity with basic weapons handling, squad formations, and the brutal hierarchy that governs their society. Unlike human soldiers who require months of training to achieve battlefield competency, Ork boys can engage in complex military operations within days of their emergence, their inherited combat instincts allowing them to function effectively in environments that would overwhelm untrained recruits from other species. The organization of boys into mobs represents the primary tactical unit within Ork military structure, typically consisting of 10 to 30 individuals united under the leadership of a dominant nob. These formations emerge organically through the natural process of Ork social interaction, with larger and more aggressive individuals automatically assuming command positions, while smaller boys fall into supporting roles. The selection process operates through constant low-level competition and occasional violent challenges, ensuring that mob leadership remains in the hands of those most capable of directing their subordinates in combat situations. Nobs who lead these mobs possess enhanced physical capabilities that set them apart from ordinary boys, their increased size and strength reflecting successful absorption of Waaagh energy from previous combat experiences. Standing 7 to 8 feet tall and weighing considerably more than their subordinates, these leaders carry superior equipment that demonstrates their elevated status within the warband hierarchy. Their weapons typically include power claws, big choppas, or combi weapons that combine multiple firing mechanisms into single platforms, while their armor often incorporates salvaged components from defeated enemies or custom modifications created by skilled mechboys. The relationship between knobs and their subordinate boys operates on principles of respect earned through demonstrated combat effectiveness rather than formal military discipline. Orc warriors follow their leaders because they believe these individuals offer the best prospects for successful violence and profitable looting, not because of abstract concepts like duty or loyalty. This creates a dynamic command structure where leadership authority must be constantly reinforced through successful battlefield performance, with ineffective knobs quickly finding themselves challenged by ambitious subordinates or abandoned by followers seeking more competent leaders. The loose command structure that characterizes Orc military formations reflects their species' fundamental inability to maintain rigid hierarchical systems over extended periods. While boys generally defer to knobs and knobs acknowledge the authority of higher-ranking leaders, this deference operates within strict limitations defined by Orc cultural expectations. Orders that contradict basic Orc instincts or fail to provide adequate opportunities for violence are routinely ignored or creatively reinterpreted, with subordinates pursuing their own interpretations of mission objectives rather than following specific tactical directives. This flexibility in command relationships provides significant advantages in fluid combat situations where rigid military structures might prove counterproductive. Orc mobs can adapt quickly to changing battlefield conditions, with individual boys taking initiative when opportunities present themselves rather than waiting for formal authorization from higher command levels. The system encourages aggressive action and creative problem solving, allowing Orc forces to exploit tactical openings that more disciplined armies might miss due to communication delays or procedural requirements. However, the same flexibility that provides tactical advantages also creates coordination challenges that limit the effectiveness of large-scale operations. Complex maneuvers requiring precise timing between multiple units often fail when individual mob leaders interpret their roles differently or pursue personal objectives that conflict with broader strategic goals. Successful warbosses must account for these limitations when planning major operations, designing strategies that channel Orc aggression toward productive objectives while accepting that detailed tactical control remains impossible. The specialized unit types that emerge from basic Orc boys formations reflect both practical battlefield requirements and cultural preferences that have evolved over millions of years of constant warfare. These specializations develop through natural selection processes that favor individuals whose capabilities match specific tactical roles, with successful specialists receiving enhanced equipment and status recognition that reinforces their chosen paths. The three primary categories of specialized boys each fill distinct functions within Waaagh operations, their different approaches to warfare providing the tactical flexibility necessary for sustained military campaigns. Slugga boys represent the purest expression of Orc combat philosophy, their preference for close quarters battle reflecting the species' fundamental belief that personal violence provides the ultimate measure of warrior capability. These specialists carry crude but effective pistols alongside various melee weapons, typically choppas or crude blades salvaged from battlefield debris. Their tactical role focuses on closing with enemy forces as quickly as possible, using their superior physical strength and pain tolerance to overwhelm opponents in hand-to-hand combat where their natural advantages prove most decisive. The equipment carried by Slugga boys emphasizes reliability and simplicity over technological sophistication, with their weapons designed to function effectively despite minimal maintenance and rough handling. Slugga pistols fire large-caliber rounds that can punch through light armor at close range, while their simple construction allows field repairs using basic tools and salvaged components. The melee weapons favored by these specialists range from traditional Orc choppas with serrated edges designed to cause maximum tissue damage to improvised clubs and blades created from industrial equipment or vehicle components. Their armor typically consists of salvaged plates and crude protective gear that provides basic protection while allowing the mobility necessary for aggressive assault tactics. Slugga boys prefer speed and aggressiveness over defensive positioning, relying on their ability to close with enemies quickly enough to avoid prolonged exposure to ranged fire. This approach requires exceptional physical courage and pain tolerance, qualities that are naturally selected for within Ork society through constant combat and competition. The psychological impact of Slugga boy charges often proves as valuable as their direct combat effectiveness, with enemy forces frequently breaking formation when confronted by masses of screaming orcs wielding crude weapons and showing complete disregard for personal safety. The sight of hundreds of green-skinned warriors advancing through defensive fire while roaring traditional war cries can shatter the morale of even experienced soldiers, creating tactical opportunities that more cautious approaches might not achieve. Shooter boys provide the ranged fire support necessary for sustained combat operations, their preference for firearms reflecting a more tactical approach to warfare that emphasizes suppressive fire and target elimination over personal glory. These specialists carry various types of projectile weapons, from basic shooters that fire streams of bullets with minimal accuracy to more sophisticated weapons salvaged from defeated enemies or constructed by skilled mech boys. Their role within mob formations involves providing covering fire for advancing Slugga boys while engaging enemy positions that require ranged solutions. The weapons employed by shooter boys demonstrate the characteristic Ork approach to firearm design, prioritizing volume of fire and psychological impact over precision or ammunition efficiency. Standard shooters typically feature multiple barrels or rapid-fire mechanisms that allow sustained fire at the expense of accuracy, creating suppressive effects that pin enemy forces while friendly units maneuver for advantageous positions. The psychological impact of massed Ork gunfire, with its distinctive sound and visible tracer effects, often proves as valuable as the actual casualties inflicted. Their tactical deployment requires more coordination than Slugga boy operations, with effective shooter boy units positioning themselves to provide overlapping fields of fire while maintaining communication with advancing assault elements. This coordination operates through simple visual signals and shouted commands rather than sophisticated communication systems, relying on the natural tactical instincts that all Orks possess to maintain unit cohesion during complex operations. The ammunition requirements for shooter boy operations create logistical challenges that must be addressed through careful planning and resource allocation. Unlike melee weapons that require minimal maintenance, firearms need regular supplies of bullets, power cells, or other consumables that may not be readily available in combat zones. Successful shooter boy units typically include Gretchen assistants who handle ammunition resupply and basic weapon maintenance, allowing the specialists to focus on combat operations while ensuring their equipment remains functional. Ard boys represent the elite assault troops within Ork military formations, their enhanced armor and equipment reflecting their status as the most experienced and capable warriors available to mob leaders. These specialists have survived numerous combat engagements that would have killed ordinary boys, their accumulated experience and battle-tested equipment making them invaluable assets for the most dangerous missions. The selection process for Ard boy status operates through natural attrition, with only the toughest and most skilled warriors surviving long enough to qualify for the enhanced gear and recognition that defines this specialization. The armor worn by Ard boys consists of heavy plates and protective systems that provide significantly better protection than standard Ork equipment, often incorporating salvaged components from Space Marine power armor, Imperial Guard flak vests, or other high-quality defensive systems. This enhanced protection allows them to survive direct hits from weapons that would incapacitate ordinary boys, making them ideal for spearhead assaults against heavily defended positions. The weight and bulk of their armor requires exceptional physical strength to operate effectively, further limiting Ard boy selection to the largest and most powerful individuals available. Their weapons reflect their elite status within Ork society, typically including power weapons, plasma guns, or other advanced systems that require specialized knowledge to operate safely. Many Ardboys carry equipment taken from defeated Space Marines or other elite enemy units, viewing these trophies as symbols of their combat prowess while benefiting from their superior performance characteristics. The maintenance requirements for such sophisticated equipment often necessitate close relationships with skilled mechboys who can provide the technical expertise necessary to keep advanced systems functional. The tactical role of Ardboys focuses on breakthrough operations and the elimination of hardened enemy positions that conventional assault troops cannot overcome. Their enhanced protection and firepower allow them to advance through defensive fire that would stop ordinary mobs, creating gaps in enemy lines that can be exploited by follow-up forces. This capability makes them particularly valuable during siege operations or urban warfare, where fortified positions must be cleared through direct assault rather than maneuver tactics. The concept of propafeutin permeates every aspect of Ork military culture, representing their species' fundamental belief that warfare constitutes the ultimate expression of their evolutionary purpose. This philosophy extends far beyond simple aggression or territorial expansion to encompass a comprehensive worldview that defines success, status, and personal fulfillment through combat achievement. Orks who fail to engage in regular violence experience physical and psychological deterioration that can ultimately prove fatal, making warfare not merely a cultural preference but a biological necessity. The standards that define propafeutin emphasize personal courage, aggressive tactics, and the achievement of decisive results through direct confrontation with worthy opponents. Orks respect enemies who fight back effectively, viewing such resistance as validation of their own combat prowess, while providing the challenge necessary for personal growth and development. Conversely, opponents who surrender quickly or employ defensive tactics that avoid direct engagement are considered unworthy adversaries whose defeat provides minimal satisfaction or status enhancement. This combat philosophy creates natural selection pressures that favor increasingly aggressive and capable warriors, with successful Orks growing larger and stronger through accumulated Waaagh energy, while those who fail to meet cultural expectations find themselves marginalized or eliminated. The system ensures that Ork military capabilities continue improving over time, as each generation of warriors must exceed the achievements of their predecessors to earn recognition and advancement within their society. The practical applications of propafeutin principles influence every aspect of Ork tactical doctrine, from individual weapon selection to large-scale strategic planning. Operations that rely heavily on stealth, deception, or indirect approaches are generally viewed with suspicion by traditional Ork leaders, who prefer straightforward assaults that provide clear opportunities for personal glory and combat achievement. This preference for direct action can create tactical limitations in certain situations, but it also ensures that Ork forces maintain the aggressive momentum necessary for sustained offensive operations. The recruitment methods employed by growing Waaagh organizations demonstrate the magnetic effect that successful military operations have on Ork populations throughout the galaxy. As word of victories and profitable raids spreads through informal communication networks, independent warbands and individual warriors begin gravitating toward the successful leader, seeking opportunities to participate in what appears to be a promising campaign. This process operates through multiple mechanisms that compound to create exponential growth in Waaagh strength and capability. Freebooters represent perhaps the most mobile element of Ork society, their independent status allowing them to respond quickly to reports of successful Waaagh operations without the organizational constraints that limit clan-based warbands. These mercenary groups typically consist of experienced warriors who have separated from their original clans due to personality conflicts, failed leadership challenges, or simple desire for greater independence. Their expertise and equipment often exceed that of ordinary boys, making them valuable additions to any growing Waaagh despite their reputation for unreliability and opportunistic behavior. The attraction of freebooters to successful operations creates a feedback loop that accelerates Waaagh growth while providing access to specialized capabilities that might not be available within traditional clan structures. Many freebooter groups specialize in particular types of warfare, such as void combat, siege operations, or fast attack tactics, bringing expertise that enhances the overall military capability of their new organization. However, their independent nature also creates management challenges, as freebooter leaders typically demand significant autonomy and may abandon the Waaagh if better opportunities arise elsewhere. The integration of mercenary groups requires careful balance between providing adequate incentives for continued service while maintaining the authority structure necessary for effective command and control. Successful warbosses typically assign freebooter units to missions that match their specialized capabilities while ensuring that their success contributes to broader strategic objectives. This approach maximizes the value of their expertise while minimizing the risks associated with their potentially unreliable loyalty. The absorption of defeated rival warbands represents another crucial mechanism for Waaagh expansion, with successful operations often resulting in the integration of entire enemy organizations rather than their complete destruction. This process operates through the fundamental Ork respect for superior combat capability, with defeated warriors typically accepting service under victorious leaders rather than facing elimination or exile. The integration process requires careful management to prevent internal conflicts while ensuring that new recruits understand their position within the established hierarchy. Defeated nobs and their followers often retain their internal organization structure while accepting subordination to the victorious warboss and their established lieutenants. This allows rapid expansion of Waaagh capabilities without the time and resource requirements that would be necessary to build equivalent forces from scratch. However, the process also introduces potential instability, as former rivals may harbor resentment or ambitions that could threaten organizational unity if not properly managed through appropriate assignments and advancement opportunities. The crude machinery that drives every Waaagh forward exists through the specialized knowledge of Ork society's most unusual members, the Boyz. These individuals represent genetic throwbacks to the ancient Krork's sophisticated understanding of technology, medicine, and psychic manipulation, though their capabilities manifest in characteristically brutal Ork fashion. While ordinary Boyz possess the basic combat instincts necessary for warfare, Boyz carry additional genetic programming that grants them intuitive mastery over specific technical disciplines essential for sustaining large-scale military operations across multiple star systems. Boyz embody the technological soul of Ork civilization, their innate understanding of mechanical principles allowing them to create functional war machines from the most unlikely combinations of salvaged components and scrap metal. These specialists possess what they refer to as Orki-no-Watts, an instinctual comprehension of engineering that operates entirely outside conventional scientific methodology. They understand that certain configurations of gears, pistons, and electrical components will produce desired effects without grasping the underlying physics or mathematics that govern such systems. This intuitive approach results in creations that horrify trained engineers while somehow managing to function with devastating effectiveness on battlefields across the galaxy. The workshop of a typical Boy represents organized chaos on an industrial scale, with half-completed projects scattered among piles of salvaged components, experimental weapons, and jury-rigged manufacturing equipment. These facilities, known as mech shops, operate according to no recognizable safety protocols or quality control standards, with dangerous chemicals stored next to high-energy power cells and experimental explosives. The constant din of hammering, welding, and mechanical testing creates an environment that would prove lethal to most other species, yet Boyz thrive in these conditions, their enhanced constitution allowing them to work for days without rest while exposed to toxic fumes and dangerous radiation levels. Their creative process follows patterns that defy logical analysis, with individual mechboys often beginning projects without clear objectives or detailed plans. They select components based on intuitive feelings about their potential compatibility, combining Imperial plasma generators with Eldar crystal matrices and Chaos-tainted metal alloys to create hybrid systems that should theoretically explode upon activation. Yet these impossible amalgamations not only function, but often exceed the performance characteristics of their individual components, their effectiveness enhanced by the psychic reinforcement provided by the surrounding Waaagh field. The weapons produced by mechboy workshops demonstrate their creators' fundamental understanding of Ork combat preferences, emphasizing raw destructive power and psychological impact over precision or ammunition efficiency. Shooter designs typically incorporate multiple barrels, oversized magazines, and various mechanical enhancements that increase rate of fire at the expense of accuracy and reliability. These weapons produce tremendous noise and muzzle flash effects that intimidate enemies while providing the volume of fire necessary to suppress defensive positions during Ork assaults. Big shooters represent the pinnacle of mechboy small arms development, featuring massive caliber projectiles and sustained fire capabilities that can punch through light vehicle armor while maintaining sufficient portability for infantry operations. The construction of these weapons requires careful balance between firepower and mechanical reliability, as their high-stress operating conditions quickly reveal any weaknesses in materials or design. Successful big shooter designs often incorporate salvaged heavy weapon components from Imperial Guard autocannons or Space Marine heavy bolters, their proven engineering providing the foundation for mechboy modifications and improvements. The rocket launches favored by many Ork units demonstrate the mechboy approach to explosive ordnance, combining crude but effective guidance systems with warheads designed for maximum blast effect rather than precision targeting. These weapons fire self-propelled projectiles that follow erratic flight paths toward their intended targets, their unpredictable trajectories making them difficult to intercept, while creating psychological pressure on enemy forces who cannot predict where the explosions will occur. The warheads themselves typically consist of whatever explosive materials are readily available, from conventional chemical charges to improvised nuclear devices cobbled together from reactor components. Vehicle construction represents the most visible expression of mechboy engineering capabilities, with their creations ranging from simple transport trucks to massive war machines that rival Imperial Titans in size and firepower. The design philosophy underlying these vehicles prioritizes speed, durability, and weapon capacity over comfort or safety, creating machines that can traverse the most hostile terrain while delivering their crews to combat zones in functional condition. The construction process typically involves multiple mechboys working in loose coordination, their combined expertise guided by shared understanding of basic mechanical principles rather than detailed blueprints or specifications. Trucks serve as the workhorses of Ork mechanized forces, their simple but robust construction allowing them to transport entire squads of boys across battlefield terrain while providing mobile fire support through mounted weapon systems. These vehicles feature exposed engines, minimal armor protection, and open crew compartments that allow passengers to contribute to firefights while in transit. The lack of enclosed passenger areas reflects both practical considerations about weight and complexity, as well as Ork cultural preferences for remaining close to the action during combat operations. The engines that power these vehicles demonstrate mechboy ingenuity in adapting salvaged components for specialized applications. Imperial Guard truck engines are frequently modified with nitrous injection systems, oversized fuel pumps, and crude turbocharging mechanisms that dramatically increase power output at the expense of operational lifespan. These modifications often involve the integration of completely incompatible technologies, such as plasma reactor components installed in conventional internal combustion engines or psychic amplification crystals used as spark plugs. Wartracks and warboss provide fast attack capabilities for Waaagh forces, their lightweight construction and powerful engines allowing them to outflank enemy positions while delivering concentrated firepower against vulnerable targets. These vehicles sacrifice armor protection and passenger capacity in favor of speed and maneuverability, creating platforms ideally suited for hit and run tactics and reconnaissance operations. Their crews typically consist of the most reckless and aggressive orcs available, individuals whose enthusiasm for high-speed combat overrides normal self-preservation instincts. The gargants that serve as the ultimate expression of mech by engineering represent collaborative projects requiring the combined efforts of multiple big mechs and their subordinate specialists. These walking fortresses stand hundreds of feet tall, their massive frames incorporating dozens of weapon systems, crew compartments for hundreds of orcs, and enough armor plating to shrug off direct hits from orbital bombardment cannons. The construction process requires months or even years of continuous work, with individual components being fabricated separately before assembly into the final configuration. The head of a typical gargant houses the primary command center and most sophisticated weapon systems, including massive artillery pieces capable of engaging targets at extreme range and energy weapons salvaged from defeated titans or spacecraft. The torso section contains the primary power plant, ammunition storage, and crew quarters, while the limbs incorporate additional weapons and the mechanical systems necessary for locomotion. The entire structure is held together through a combination of massive bolts, welding, and psychic reinforcement from the Waaagh field, creating a machine that defies conventional engineering principles while somehow remaining functional. Boyz fulfill the medical requirements of Waaagh operations through an approach to healthcare that emphasizes immediate battlefield effectiveness over patient comfort or long-term welfare. These specialists possess an intuitive understanding of orc physiology that allows them to perform complex surgical procedures using improvised tools and salvaged medical equipment. Their primary responsibility involves keeping wounded orcs functional enough to continue fighting, often through the liberal application of crude cybernetic replacements, stimulant injections, and emergency surgical repairs that would horrify trained physicians from more civilized species. The medical facilities operated by Boyz serve multiple functions within Waaagh infrastructure, combining treatment centers with research laboratories and cybernetic workshops. These establishments, typically constructed from salvaged medical equipment and industrial machinery, operate according to no recognizable sanitation protocols or patient safety standards. The constant screams of patients undergoing treatment without adequate anesthesia create an atmosphere that reflects the brutal pragmatism underlying Boyz medical philosophy, where immediate functional restoration takes precedence over minimizing patient discomfort. Their surgical procedures demonstrate remarkable innovation in adapting available materials for medical applications, with Boyz routinely performing amputations using industrial cutting tools, installing cybernetic implants with welding equipment, and administering anesthesia through carefully calibrated blunt force trauma to specific cranial pressure points. These crude methods achieve surprisingly high success rates, largely due to the exceptional resilience of orc physiology and the psychic reinforcement provided by patients' absolute faith in their treatment's effectiveness. The cybernetic enhancements provided by Boyz often exceed the capabilities of the original biological components they replace, creating warriors whose mechanical augmentations provide significant combat advantages. Bionic arms can generate crushing forces sufficient to penetrate ceramite armor plating, while artificial legs provide enhanced speed and jumping capabilities that allow recipients to traverse battlefield terrain with unprecedented mobility. Replacement organs frequently demonstrate improved efficiency over their natural counterparts, with mechanical hearts providing enhanced circulation and artificial lungs allowing extended operation in toxic environments. The power systems that drive these cybernetic enhancements typically consist of compact generators or battery packs that require regular maintenance and fuel replenishment. This creates dependency relationships between enhanced orcs and their Boyz benefactors, ensuring continued loyalty while providing ongoing revenue streams for the medical specialists. The most successful Boyz maintain extensive client networks of augmented warriors who return regularly for maintenance, upgrades, and additional modifications that enhance their combat effectiveness. The spare parts inventory maintained by active Boyz represents a grisly collection of biological and mechanical components harvested from various sources throughout their careers. Fresh organs are typically acquired from recently deceased Orks, while mechanical components come from salvaged equipment, defeated enemies, or specialized manufacturing operations conducted within their workshops. The storage and preservation of these materials requires considerable technical expertise, with Boyz employing various chemical treatments and mechanical systems to maintain component viability until needed for surgical applications. Boyz represent the most dangerous and unpredictable category of Boyz, their ability to consciously channel Waaagh energy making them invaluable assets and constant threats to their own forces. These individuals serve as living conduits for the psychic power generated by large Ork gatherings, their enhanced sensitivity to the Waaagh field allowing them to manifest devastating supernatural effects that can alter the course of entire battles. However, this same sensitivity makes them vulnerable to psychic overload, with many Boyz eventually succumbing to spectacular explosive deaths when the energy flowing through them exceeds their biological capacity to contain it. The manifestation of Boy powers follows patterns that reflect the violent nature of Ork society, with their abilities typically focusing on direct damage, dealing rather than subtle manipulation or defensive applications. Psychic lightning bolts capable of vaporizing enemy vehicles represent their most common offensive capability, while force blasts can punch through fortification walls or scatter entire enemy formations. These powers draw directly from the aggressive emotions of surrounding Orks, becoming more potent as combat intensity increases and more warriors contribute their psychic emanations to the collective field. The unpredictable nature of Boy abilities creates tactical challenges that must be carefully managed during combat operations. Psychic backlash can manifest as uncontrolled energy discharges that incinerate nearby friendly forces, spatial distortions that teleport entire squads into disadvantageous positions, or temporal anomalies that trap units in accelerated time loops. These incidents are generally accepted as inevitable casualties of warfare, with surviving Orks viewing spectacular Boy explosions as entertaining diversions rather than tragic losses of valuable personnel. The training process for developing Boy capabilities operates through exposure to increasingly intense Waaagh fields rather than formal instruction or theoretical study. Prospective Boys typically begin experiencing psychic phenomena during their first major battles, with their abilities gradually strengthening through repeated exposure to combat situations. Those who survive the initial manifestation period often develop sufficient control to avoid immediate self-destruction, though the constant risk of catastrophic overload ensures that few Boys enjoy extended careers. The equipment used by active Boys reflects their unique requirements for channeling and focusing psychic energy while protecting themselves from the dangerous side effects of their abilities. Psychic amplification devices, typically constructed from crystalline components salvaged from Eldar equipment or Imperial Psyker gear, help focus their powers while reducing the risk of uncontrolled discharge. Protective talismans and crude psychic dampening fields provide limited defense against backlash effects, though their effectiveness remains questionable given the frequency of Boy casualties during major operations. Beyond the three primary categories of Boys, Waaagh infrastructure depends on various other specialists whose contributions, while less visible than those of Mech Boys, Pain Boys, and Weird Boys, prove equally essential for sustaining large-scale military operations. These secondary specialists fill niche roles that ensure the smooth functioning of complex organizational systems, while maintaining the aggressive momentum necessary for continued expansion and conquest. Runthards manage the extensive populations of Gretchen and Snotlings that handle basic labor requirements within Waaagh operations, their expertise in motivating and organizing these smaller creatures proving crucial for maintaining supply lines and support services. These specialists possess an intuitive understanding of Gretchen psychology that allows them to extract maximum productivity from their charges, while preventing the rebellions and work stoppages that can cripple military operations. Their methods typically involve carefully calibrated combinations of physical intimidation, food rewards, and opportunities for advancement that keep Gretchen populations motivated and productive. The management techniques employed by experienced Runthards demonstrate sophisticated understanding of organizational psychology, with successful specialists creating competitive hierarchies among their Gretchen workers that channel natural aggressiveness into productive activities. Work crews compete for access to better equipment and food rations, while individual Gretchen can earn supervisory positions over their peers through demonstrated competence and loyalty. This system ensures high productivity levels while providing advancement opportunities that prevent widespread dissatisfaction among the workforce. Big mechs represent the senior tier of mechbo hierarchy, their enhanced capabilities and accumulated expertise allowing them to coordinate major construction projects while providing technical leadership for complex engineering challenges. These individuals have survived long enough to accumulate extensive knowledge of various technological systems, their experience enabling them to integrate components from multiple sources into cohesive designs that exceed the capabilities of simpler creations. The respect they command among ordinary mechboys allows them to organize collaborative projects that individual specialists could not complete independently. The workshops operated by big mechs serve as centers of technological innovation within Waaagh infrastructure, with multiple junior specialists working under their supervision on projects ranging from weapon development to vehicle construction. These facilities typically feature more sophisticated equipment and better organization than standard mech shops, though they maintain the chaotic atmosphere and dangerous working conditions that characterize all Ork technical installations. The collaborative environment allows for knowledge transfer between specialists while fostering the competitive spirit that drives continuous improvement in Ork technology. The thunderous roar of Ork engines echoes across battlefields throughout the galaxy, their crude but devastatingly effective war machines advancing through clouds of black smoke and the distinctive green glow of improvised energy weapons. These mechanical monstrosities exist in defiance of conventional engineering principles, their functionality dependent not merely on physical components, but on the collective belief of their operators and the psychic field that permeates all Ork technology. The philosophy underlying these creations reflects the species' fundamental approach to problem solving. If something works, it must be good, and if it can be made to work faster, louder, or more destructively, it becomes even better. The most famous manifestation of Ork technological philosophy centers around their absolute conviction that red vehicles move faster than those painted in other colors. This belief operates through the Waaagh field's reality-altering properties, with sufficient collective faith actually causing red-painted machines to achieve higher speeds than identical vehicles in different color schemes. Mechboys instinctively understand this principle without grasping its psychic foundations, routinely applying red paint to engines, exhaust systems, and speed-related components while expecting tangible performance improvements from these modifications. This color-based enhancement system extends beyond simple speed increases to encompass various other performance characteristics that Orks associate with specific hues. Yellow paint is believed to make explosions more powerful, leading to its frequent application to warheads, ammunition storage, and demolition charges. Blue coloring provides good luck, making it popular for protective talismans and defensive systems, while purple renders objects nearly invisible due to the Ork conviction that no one has ever seen a purple Ork. Black paint makes things tougher and more durable, resulting in its widespread use on armor plating and structural components throughout Ork military equipment. The practical applications of these beliefs create measurable differences in equipment performance that Imperial tech adepts struggle to explain through conventional analysis. Red Ork vehicles consistently demonstrate higher top speeds than their blue or green counterparts, while yellow-painted explosives produce blast effects that exceed the theoretical yield of their component materials. These phenomena operate independently of the mechanical modifications that typically accompany paint applications, suggesting that the psychic reinforcement provided by operator belief constitutes a genuine enhancement to base system performance. However, the effectiveness of color-based improvements depends entirely on the strength of local Waaagh fields and the number of orcs who share the relevant beliefs. Individual vehicles operating far from major orc concentrations show minimal enhancement effects, while those participating in large-scale operations benefit from exponentially increased psychic reinforcement. This creates feedback loops where successful campaigns generate stronger belief in the effectiveness of color coding, which in turn makes the enhanced equipment more effective in subsequent operations. The "if it ain't broke, don't fix it" mentality that governs orc maintenance philosophy ensures that successful designs remain largely unchanged, even when obvious improvements could be implemented. Mechboys who attempt to modify functioning equipment often find their innovations rejected by conservative operators who prefer familiar systems over untested alternatives. This resistance to change helps maintain the stability of proven designs while preventing the technological regression that might result from failed experimental modifications. Conversely, equipment that fails to meet performance expectations receives immediate and drastic modifications, with mechboys applying increasingly desperate measures to achieve desired functionality. These emergency repairs often involve the integration of completely incompatible components, such as Imperial plasma generators installed in Ork combustion engines or Eldar psychic crystals used as electrical conductors. The resulting hybrid systems should theoretically malfunction catastrophically, yet they often exceed the performance of their original configurations through psychic reinforcement and sheer mechanical ingenuity. The truck represents the most ubiquitous example of Ork vehicle design philosophy, its simple but robust construction allowing mass production using whatever materials happen to be available at the time of assembly. These transport vehicles feature exposed engines, minimal armor protection, and open crew compartments that prioritize functionality over safety or comfort. The typical truck can carry 12 fully equipped orcs across the most hostile terrain while providing mobile fire support through various weapon mounts installed throughout the passenger area. Construction of a standard truck begins with a chassis fabricated from whatever structural materials the building mechboy considers appropriate, ranging from purpose-built frames to salvaged vehicle components or even industrial machinery repurposed for transportation duties. The engine selection process follows similar pragmatic principles, with power plants chosen based on availability rather than optimal performance characteristics. Imperial Guard truck engines are frequently modified with crude but effective enhancement systems, while captured Space Marine vehicle powerplants receive extensive modifications to accommodate Ork operational requirements. The weapon systems mounted on trucks demonstrate the Ork preference for maximum firepower over tactical subtlety, with most vehicles carrying multiple gun positions that allow passengers to contribute to firefights while in transit. Big shooters mounted on pintle mounts provide sustained fire capability against infantry and light vehicles, while rocket launches offer anti-armor potential at the cost of ammunition capacity and accuracy. The installation of these weapons typically involves crude but effective mounting systems that prioritize ease of operation over sophisticated fire control or stabilization mechanisms. The open-top design that characterizes most trucks reflects both practical construction considerations and cultural preferences that value aggressive participation in combat over defensive positioning. Enclosed passenger compartments would require additional materials and manufacturing complexity while preventing the crew from engaging enemies during transit. Ork warriors prefer the ability to shoot, shout, and intimidate opponents throughout their journey to the battlefield, viewing the increased vulnerability as an acceptable trade-off for maintaining combat readiness. Battle wagons serve as the heavy assault vehicles of Ork mechanized forces, their massive construction and extensive armor protection allowing them to survive direct confrontations with enemy tanks while delivering large numbers of warriors to critical battlefield positions. These vehicles represent significant investments of time and resources, with their construction requiring the coordinated efforts of multiple mechboys and extensive quantities of salvaged materials. The resulting machines demonstrate impressive durability and firepower that can challenge Imperial main battle tanks despite their crude construction methods. The armor protection fitted to battle wagons typically consists of multiple layers of salvaged plating welded together in overlapping configurations that provide excellent protection against most conventional weapons. The plates themselves come from various sources, including destroyed vehicles, industrial equipment, and purpose-built armor sections fabricated specifically for the project. The irregular thickness and composition of these protective systems create complex ballistic characteristics that can deflect or absorb impacts that would penetrate more uniform armor arrangements. The primary weapon systems mounted on battle wagons emphasize direct fire support and anti-vehicle capabilities, with most machines carrying combinations of cannons, Z-Zap guns, or other heavy weapons capable of engaging hardened targets at extended ranges. These weapons typically receive custom mounting systems that allow for limited traverse and elevation adjustment, though the crude nature of Ork fire control systems means that accuracy depends largely on the skill and experience of individual gunners rather than sophisticated targeting equipment. The transport capacity of a typical battle wagon allows it to carry 20 or more fully equipped Orks into combat while providing them with protection from small arms fire and artillery fragments. The passenger compartment features firing ports that allow the embarked warriors to contribute to firefights while remaining under cover, though these openings also provide entry points for enemy grenades and other small explosives. The balance between protection and offensive capability reflects the Ork preference for aggressive tactics that emphasize forward momentum over defensive positioning. Def Dreads represent the Ork approach to walker technology, combining the mobility advantages of bipedal locomotion with the firepower and protection characteristics of conventional vehicles. These machines serve as both assault platforms and mobile fire support units, their versatile design allowing them to fulfill multiple battlefield roles depending on weapon configuration and tactical requirements. The construction process requires considerable expertise in both mechanical engineering and cybernetic integration, as the pilot must be permanently installed within the machine's control systems. The selection process for Def Dread pilots operates through a combination of voluntary recruitment and involuntary conscription, with candidates typically consisting of severely wounded Orks who cannot continue fighting in conventional roles. The integration procedure involves extensive surgical modifications that connect the pilot's nervous system directly to the machine's control mechanisms, creating a hybrid organism that combines biological consciousness with mechanical capability. The process is invariably fatal if the pilot is ever removed from the machine, ensuring absolute loyalty and dedication to their new role. The weapons loadout carried by individual Def Dreads varies considerably depending on available components and intended tactical role, with most machines mounting combinations of close combat weapons and range systems that provide flexibility in different engagement scenarios. Power claws and buzz saws handle close quarters combat requirements, while big shooters and rockets provide fire support capability. The modular nature of weapon mounting systems allows for field modifications based on mission requirements or component availability. The psychological impact of Def Dreads often proves as valuable as their direct combat effectiveness, with enemy forces frequently showing decreased morale when confronted by these obviously unnatural hybrid creatures. The distinctive sound of their mechanical locomotion systems, combined with the amplified war cries of their pilots, creates an intimidation effect that can break enemy formations before physical combat begins. This psychological warfare capability makes Def Dreads particularly effective in assault operations where enemy morale constitutes a critical factor in defensive effectiveness. The massive gargants that serve as the ultimate expression of Ork engineering represent collaborative projects requiring years of construction time and the combined expertise of multiple big mechs working in coordination. These walking fortresses stand several hundred feet tall, their colossal frames incorporating dozens of weapon systems, crew quarters for hundreds of Orks, and enough armor protection to withstand direct hits from orbital bombardment weapons. The construction process involves the fabrication of thousands of individual components that must be assembled into a coherent whole capable of independent operation across various terrain types. The head section of a typical Gargant houses the primary command center and most sophisticated weapon systems, including massive artillery pieces capable of engaging targets at extreme range and energy weapons salvaged from defeated Titans or captured spacecraft. The command crew typically consists of the most experienced Orks available, their enhanced status within the Waaagh hierarchy reflecting both the prestige associated with Gargant operations and the technical expertise required for effective coordination of such complex systems. The torso and limb sections contain the primary power plant, ammunition storage facilities, crew quarters, and the mechanical systems necessary for locomotion across battlefield terrain. The power requirements for operating a Gargant exceed those of most industrial facilities, necessitating the installation of multiple reactor systems or massive conventional engines that can provide sufficient energy for weapons, movement, and life support systems. The fuel consumption rates for these power plants require extensive logistical support that can strain Waaagh supply capabilities during extended operations. The weapons complement mounted on individual Gargants typically includes multiple categories of armament designed to engage different target types at various ranges. Primary weapons consist of massive artillery pieces or energy cannons capable of destroying enemy Titans or leveling fortified positions with single shots. Secondary armaments include numerous anti-vehicle and anti-personnel systems that provide defensive capability against smaller threats attempting to exploit the Gargant's limited mobility. The integration of these diverse weapon systems requires sophisticated fire control mechanisms that represent the pinnacle of Ork technological achievement. The role of Gretchen within Ork military operations extends far beyond simple manual labor to encompass critical support functions that enable the continued operation of complex war machines and weapon systems. These diminutive creatures serve as ammunition bearers, maintaining the steady supply of projectiles necessary for sustained firefights, while their small size allows them to access maintenance areas that would be inaccessible to full-sized Orks. Their natural dexterity and relatively steady hands make them ideal for performing delicate repair work on sensitive equipment that might be damaged by the crude manipulations of larger warriors. The ammunition handling duties performed by Gretchen crews require considerable physical strength relative to their body size, as many Ork weapons fire projectiles that weigh several pounds each. Big Shooter ammunition belts can exceed 50 pounds when fully loaded, while rocket launcher projectiles often weigh more than the Gretchen responsible for carrying them. Despite these physical challenges, Gretchen ammunition bearers demonstrate remarkable efficiency in maintaining weapon supply during extended engagements, their fear of their Ork masters providing powerful motivation for continued performance under the most adverse conditions. The mechanical maintenance performed by Gretchen assistants involves tasks that require more precision than most Orks can provide, such as cleaning weapon barrels, adjusting firing mechanisms, and replacing worn components in complex systems. Their small hands allow them to reach into confined spaces within vehicle engines and weapon assemblies, performing repairs and adjustments that would require partial disassembly if attempted by larger individuals. This capability proves particularly valuable during combat operations when time constraints prevent thorough maintenance procedures. The relationship between Gretchen workers and their Ork supervisors operates through carefully maintained systems of intimidation and reward that ensure continued productivity while preventing the rebellions that could cripple military operations. Successful Gretchen receive better food rations, improved equipment, and protection from abuse by other Orks, while those who fail to meet performance standards face immediate and violent punishment. This system creates competitive hierarchies among Gretchen populations that channel their natural cunning into productive activities rather than subversive plotting. The looting and adaptation of enemy technology represents one of the most impressive aspects of Ork engineering capability, with Boyz demonstrating remarkable skill in integrating captured equipment into their existing systems despite having no formal understanding of the underlying scientific principles. Imperial Guard vehicles are frequently stripped of useful components that find new applications in Ork war machines, while Space Marine equipment provides high-quality materials that can enhance the performance of otherwise crude systems. Even Xenos technology from Eldar or Tau sources can be successfully incorporated into Ork designs through creative adaptation and psychic reinforcement. The process of technological integration typically begins with careful examination of captured equipment to identify components that might prove useful in existing Ork systems. Boyz possess an intuitive understanding of mechanical compatibility that allows them to recognize potentially valuable items even when their original function remains mysterious. Imperial plasma generators are frequently repurposed as power sources for Ork energy weapons, while sophisticated targeting systems become components in crude but effective fire control mechanisms. The adaptation process often involves significant modifications to both the salvaged components and the Ork systems intended to incorporate them, with Boyz creating hybrid interfaces that bridge the gap between incompatible technologies. These modifications typically sacrifice some of the original equipment's sophisticated capabilities in favor of reliability and ease of maintenance, reflecting the Ork preference for robust systems that can function effectively under adverse conditions. The resulting hybrid systems often demonstrate performance characteristics that exceed those of either component technology operating independently. The success of these integration efforts depends heavily on the strength of local Waaagh fields and the collective belief of Ork operators in the effectiveness of their hybrid systems. Equipment that should theoretically malfunction due to incompatible operating principles often performs flawlessly when operated by Orks who expect it to work properly. This psychic reinforcement allows Boyz to create functional systems from combinations of components that would be rejected as impossible by conventional engineers, enabling technological capabilities that far exceed what should be achievable through purely mechanical means. The galaxy has witnessed countless Ork invasions throughout its blood-soaked history, but certain Waaghs transcend mere military campaigns to become epoch-defining catastrophes that reshape entire sectors and force fundamental changes in how civilized species approach the greenskin threat. These legendary invasions demonstrate the true potential of Ork society when unified under exceptional leadership, their scale and ferocity serving as grim reminders that the devolved descendants of the ancient Krork retain enough of their original capabilities to threaten the very foundations of galactic civilization. The War of the Beast stands as the most devastating Ork invasion in recorded Imperial history, a cataclysmic campaign that brought the species closer to conquering Terra than any external threat since the Horus Heresy itself. During the 32nd millennium, when the Imperium had grown complacent after centuries of relative stability, a massive Waaagh emerged from the galactic east under the leadership of a creature that Imperial scholars would later designate simply as the Beast. This entity represented something far more dangerous than the typical Ork warboss, standing nearly 12 feet tall and demonstrating tactical sophistication that shocked Imperial commanders who had grown accustomed to fighting crude and disorganized greenskin raiders. The beast's physical characteristics suggested a throwback to the original Krork specifications, his enhanced size and intelligence indicating that the genetic potential for the species' original form remained locked within Ork DNA, awaiting the proper conditions for manifestation. Unlike conventional warbosses, who relied primarily on personal charisma and brute force to maintain control over their followers, the beast demonstrated strategic thinking capabilities that allowed him to coordinate simultaneous operations across dozens of star systems, while maintaining the unity of traditionally fractious Ork clans through a combination of fear, respect, and the promise of unprecedented conquest. The initial phases of the War of the Beast caught Imperial forces completely unprepared for the scale and coordination of the Ork assault. Entire subsectors fell within months as massive fleets of ramshackle, but effective Ork vessels swept through Imperial space, their crude but devastating weapons overwhelming defense forces that had grown soft through decades of fighting minor Xenos incursions and pirate raids. The speed of the Ork advance prevented effective coordination between Imperial military commands, with isolated garrison forces facing overwhelming odds, while reinforcements remained trapped behind enemy lines or committed to defending other threatened sectors. The Ork forces demonstrated technological capabilities that far exceeded anything previously encountered, with their war machines incorporating sophisticated systems that suggested access to advanced manufacturing facilities or the successful integration of captured Imperial technology on an unprecedented scale. Gargants the size of Imperial Titans stalked across battlefields alongside smaller, but equally deadly war engines, their weapons capable of reducing fortified positions to rubble with sustained bombardment. The coordination between these various military assets indicated command and control capabilities that challenged Imperial assumptions about Ork organizational limitations. As the Waaagh approached the Sol system itself, panic spread through the highest levels of Imperial government. The Adeptus Terra, accustomed to viewing Ork threats as manageable nuisances that could be contained through conventional military responses, suddenly faced the prospect of greenskin armies landing on the sacred soil of humanity's homeworld. Emergency protocols that had remained unused since the dark days of the Horus Heresy were activated, as every available military asset was recalled to defend the throne world against an enemy that seemed capable of achieving what even the arch-traitor Horus had failed to accomplish. The Beast's forces established forward operating bases throughout the outer Sol system, their massive space hulks, and captured Imperial vessels, creating a blockade that threatened to strangle Terra's vital supply lines. These orbital installations served as staging areas for increasingly aggressive probing attacks against the planet's outer defenses, with Ork assault craft testing Imperial response capabilities while gathering intelligence about defensive positions and garrison strength. The psychological impact of seeing greenskin vessels operating freely within sight of Terra itself proved almost as devastating as their direct military threat. The climactic assault on Terra's orbital defenses demonstrated the full extent of the Beast's tactical capabilities, with multiple coordinated attacks overwhelming Imperial Navy squadrons that had never faced such organized Ork opposition. The space battle raged for days as waves of Ork attack craft, supported by massive artillery barges and converted asteroid fortresses, hammered against defense platforms and orbital installations that had protected humanity's homeworld for millennia. The Defenders' initial advantage in technology and training gradually eroded under the relentless pressure of enemies who seemed willing to accept any casualty rate necessary to achieve their objectives. Ground-based defensive installations found themselves under simultaneous attack from multiple directions as Ork landing craft penetrated the outer defensive perimeter and began establishing beachheads on Terra's surface. The sight of greenskin banners flying over Imperial soil sent shockwaves through the planetary population, with entire hive cities declaring states of emergency as civilian populations prepared for siege conditions. The Adeptus Custodes, guardians of the Emperor's palace, found themselves deploying beyond their traditional protective role to coordinate desperate defensive efforts against an enemy that had achieved what many considered impossible. The eventual defeat of the Beast required unprecedented cooperation between Imperial military branches that had grown accustomed to operating independently, with Space Marine chapters, Imperial Guard regiments, and Navy fleets coordinating their efforts under emergency command structures that bypassed normal bureaucratic procedures. The final confrontation took place in the ruins of an orbital platform where the Beast had established his command center, with a strike force of Adeptus Astartes veterans engaging the massive Ork leader in direct combat, while supporting forces fought to prevent his escape or evacuation. The death of the beast triggered the immediate collapse of the Waaagh's unified command structure, as his subordinate leaders reverted to the typical Ork pattern of internecine conflict and territorial competition. However, the scattered remnants of his forces continued causing havoc throughout Imperial space for decades afterward, with individual warbands carrying enough equipment and expertise to threaten entire subsectors. The cleanup operations required to eliminate these fragments consumed enormous military resources, while demonstrating the long-term consequences of allowing major Waaghs to develop unchecked. The institutional changes that followed the War of the Beast fundamentally altered Imperial military doctrine and organizational structure in ways that continue influencing defensive strategies millennia later. The Adeptus Terra recognized that their previous approach to Ork threats had been dangerously inadequate, leading to comprehensive reforms in intelligence gathering, threat assessment, and military coordination procedures. New protocols were established for identifying and responding to emerging Waaghs before they could achieve the critical mass necessary for sector-wide campaigns, while improved communication systems ensured better coordination between widely scattered Imperial forces. The creation of specialized anti-Ork units within various Imperial military branches reflected hard-learned lessons about the unique challenges posed by greenskin warfare. These formations received enhanced training in Ork tactics and psychology, while being equipped with weapons and equipment specifically designed for fighting enemies, whose technology operated according to psychic principles rather than conventional physics. The institutional knowledge developed during the War of the Beast became the foundation for training programs that prepared Imperial commanders for the realities of large-scale Ork warfare rather than the minor skirmishes that had previously defined most officers' experience with the species. Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka's rise to prominence during the Second War for Armageddon established him as the most dangerous Ork leader since the Beast himself, his tactical innovations and charismatic leadership creating a new template for Waaagh organization that influenced greenskin military doctrine throughout the galaxy. His initial emergence from the industrial wastelands of Urk demonstrated the unpredictable nature of Ork leadership development, with a relatively unknown clan leader transforming into a figure capable of uniting millions of traditionally fractious warriors under a single banner of conquest and destruction. The planet Armageddon's strategic importance as a major industrial world and transportation hub made it an ideal target for Ork expansion. Its massive manufacturing capabilities and extensive infrastructure offering the resources necessary to sustain prolonged military campaigns. Thraka's decision to focus his initial efforts on this heavily defended world rather than seeking easier conquests elsewhere demonstrated strategic thinking that set him apart from typical Ork leaders who preferred targets of opportunity over carefully planned objectives. His ability to maintain siege operations against prepared Imperial defenses for extended periods required organizational capabilities that challenged conventional assumptions about Ork attention spans and logistical competence. The Second War for Armageddon showcased Thraka's talent for adapting traditional Ork tactics to exploit specific weaknesses in Imperial defensive doctrine, with his forces demonstrating unprecedented coordination between different unit types and clan elements. His integration of captured Imperial equipment into Ork military systems created hybrid formations that combined the best aspects of both technological traditions, while his use of human collaborators and turncoat Imperial Guard units provided intelligence and specialized capabilities that pure Ork forces typically lacked. These innovations influenced Ork military development throughout the galaxy as other warbosses attempted to replicate his successful techniques. The personal rivalry that developed between Thraka and Commissar Sebastian Yarrick during the Armageddon campaigns created a legendary conflict that transcended normal military operations to become a deeply personal contest between two exceptional leaders representing their respective species' martial traditions. Yarick's reputation as the most effective anti-Ork commander in Imperial service made him a natural target for Thraka's attention, while the Commissar's tactical brilliance and inspirational leadership provided the kind of challenging opposition that Orks respect and seek to overcome through superior violence and cunning. Their first direct confrontation during the Siege of Hades, Hive established the pattern for their subsequent encounters, with both leaders demonstrating exceptional tactical acumen while their forces engaged in brutal urban warfare that reduced entire city districts to rubble. Yarick's use of prepared defensive positions and coordinated artillery support initially frustrated Thraka's assault forces, leading the Ork leader to develop new tactics that emphasized mobility and infiltration over direct frontal attacks. The evolution of their tactical approaches in response to each other's innovations created an escalating cycle of military development that pushed both commanders to exceed their previous capabilities. The psychological dimensions of their rivalry proved as important as the tactical aspects, with both leaders recognizing that their personal reputations had become symbols of their species' military competence. Thraka's respect for Yarick's fighting abilities led him to spare the Commissar's life on several occasions when conventional Ork behavior would have demanded immediate execution, while Yarick's understanding of Ork psychology allowed him to exploit Thraka's desire for worthy opponents to create tactical opportunities that might not otherwise have existed. Their mutual recognition of each other's capabilities created a unique dynamic that influenced the broader conduct of the Armageddon Wars. The Third War for Armageddon demonstrated Thraka's evolution as a strategic leader, with his forces showing improved coordination and tactical sophistication that reflected lessons learned from previous campaigns. His ability to maintain operational security while planning the invasion prevented Imperial intelligence services from detecting the buildup until Ork forces were already committed to assault operations, achieving strategic surprise that had been impossible during his earlier campaigns. The scale of forces he assembled for this renewed offensive exceeded anything seen since the War of the Beast, with millions of Orks from dozens of clans united under his leadership for what he proclaimed would be the final conquest of the Imperial stronghold. The campaign's opening phases saw Thraka's forces achieving rapid territorial gains through coordinated attacks that exploited weaknesses in Imperial defensive deployments identified during previous conflicts. His use of deep strike tactics and infiltration units allowed Ork forces to bypass heavily fortified positions while striking at logistics centers and command facilities that were considered secure from conventional assault. The speed of these initial advances created panic among Imperial commanders who had expected to fight a defensive campaign similar to previous Armageddon conflicts, only to find themselves responding to enemy initiatives rather than implementing their own strategic plans. Warlord Snagrod's devastation of the Crimson Fists chapter during his assault on Rin's world demonstrated the catastrophic potential of well-executed Ork siege operations against even the most formidable Space Marine defenses. His rise to prominence followed the typical pattern of Ork leadership development through successful challenges and territorial expansion, but his subsequent campaigns showed unusual strategic patience and methodical planning that set him apart from leaders who relied primarily on aggressive momentum to achieve their objectives. The systematic nature of his assault on the Crimson Fist's fortress monastery required coordination between multiple specialized units and careful timing that challenged Imperial assumptions about Ork organizational capabilities. The preliminary bombardment that preceded Snagrod's ground assault incorporated captured Imperial artillery pieces alongside traditional Ork heavy weapons, creating a devastating barrage that overwhelmed the fortress monastery's defensive systems through sheer volume of fire rather than precision targeting. His forces demonstrated sophisticated understanding of siege warfare principles, with engineering units preparing assault routes while artillery specialists maintained suppressive fire against defensive positions. The coordination between these various elements required command and control capabilities that exceeded anything previously attributed to Ork military organizations. The ground assault phase of the operation showcased Snagrod's ability to adapt traditional Ork tactics to exploit specific vulnerabilities in Space Marine defensive doctrine, with his forces using mobility and infiltration to bypass strongpoints while striking at critical infrastructure targets. His personal leadership during the final assault on the chapter's inner sanctum demonstrated the enhanced combat capabilities that characterize the most successful Ork leaders, with his massive size and advanced equipment allowing him to engage Space Marine veterans in direct combat while coordinating the actions of hundreds of subordinates. The psychological impact of the Crimson Fist's near destruction reverberated throughout the Adeptus Astartes, challenging assumptions about Space Marine invulnerability, while demonstrating that even the Emperor's finest warriors could be overwhelmed by sufficiently well-organized Ork forces. The extensive casualties suffered by the chapter during Snagrod's assault required decades of recruitment and training to replace, while the loss of their fortress monastery and accumulated battle honors represented cultural damage that could never be fully repaired. The successful defense of their remaining positions required intervention from multiple other chapters, illustrating the scale of threat that exceptional Ork leaders can represent to Imperial security. Countless lesser Waahs throughout Imperial history have demonstrated the persistent nature of the Ork threat, with regional campaigns causing devastation across entire subsectors, while testing the limits of local Imperial military capabilities. These smaller but still significant invasions often serve as proving grounds for emerging Ork leaders, while providing opportunities for tactical innovation and equipment development that influences subsequent major campaigns. The cumulative effect of these ongoing conflicts creates constant pressure on Imperial resources, while preventing the complacency that might otherwise develop during periods of relative peace. The Badab War saw significant Ork involvement, as various warbosses attempted to exploit the chaos created by Space Marine civil conflict, with greenskin forces launching opportunistic raids against weakened Imperial positions, while the Adeptus Astartes focused their attention on internal disputes. These operations demonstrated typical Ork opportunism, while showing how quickly greenskin leaders can mobilize their forces to take advantage of unexpected strategic opportunities. The multi-sided nature of the conflict created complex tactical situations where Imperial forces found themselves fighting both rebel Space Marines and Ork raiders simultaneously, stretching their capabilities beyond normal operational limits. Regional Waahs in the Segmentum Obscurus have repeatedly tested Imperial defensive capabilities while serving as recruitment opportunities for major campaigns elsewhere in the galaxy. The harsh conditions and constant warfare that characterize this region of space create ideal environments for Ork development, with successful leaders using local conflicts as stepping stones toward larger conquests. The persistence of greenskin populations throughout the segmentum despite repeated cleansing operations demonstrates the species' remarkable resilience and their ability to rebuild from apparently devastating defeats. The ongoing nature of Ork threats across the galaxy ensures that Imperial military forces must maintain constant vigilance against potential Waaagh development, while allocating significant resources to containment operations that prevent minor conflicts from escalating into sector-wide catastrophes. This perpetual state of low-level warfare serves Ork interests by providing continuous opportunities for combat experience and equipment acquisition, while preventing Imperial forces from achieving the decisive victories necessary to eliminate greenskin populations entirely. The cycle of conflict and regeneration that characterizes Ork warfare ensures that the species will remain a persistent threat to galactic stability regardless of temporary setbacks or tactical defeats. The scarred wastelands of Urk bore witness to a transformation that would reshape the balance of power across the galaxy, as a lowly Ork named Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka emerged from the industrial hell of that blighted world to become the most feared warboss since the legendary beast himself. His rise began not through the typical path of violent challenges and territorial conquest, but through a near-fatal head wound that would fundamentally alter his consciousness and grant him visions of a destiny that transcended the petty squabbles of individual clans and warbands. The injury occurred during one of the countless skirmishes that plagued Orks' toxic surface, when a stray round from an Imperial Guard lasgun punched through Gazkul's crude helmet and lodged itself in his skull. By all conventional medical understanding, the wound should have proven fatal, but the crude ministrations of Mad Doc Grotznik somehow kept the future warboss alive long enough for his enhanced Ork physiology to adapt to the foreign object embedded in his brain tissue. The metal fragment, fused with neural pathways and scar tissue, created an unprecedented connection between Gazkul's consciousness and the psychic emanations of Gork and Mork themselves. The visions that followed his recovery defied conventional Ork experience, showing him glimpses of a future where all greenskins would unite under a single banner to sweep across the galaxy in an endless tide of conquest and destruction. These divine revelations came not as abstract concepts or mystical imagery, but as vivid tactical scenarios, showing him exactly how to coordinate the actions of millions of Orks across multiple star systems, while maintaining the unity necessary for sustained campaigns. The twin gods of the Ork pantheon spoke to him directly through the metal lodged in his skull, their voices providing strategic guidance that elevated his thinking far beyond the immediate concerns that typically occupied Ork leaders. Gork's influence manifested in Gazkul's enhanced understanding of brutal cunning, allowing him to devise elaborate tactical deceptions that could fool even experienced Imperial commanders while maintaining the aggressive momentum that kept his followers engaged. His ability to coordinate feint attacks, diversionary assaults, and complex multi-stage operations demonstrated strategic thinking capabilities that challenged every assumption about Ork intellectual limitations. The planning required for such sophisticated maneuvers operated on timescales that exceeded typical Ork attention spans, yet Gazkul maintained focus on long-term objectives while managing the immediate tactical requirements of ongoing battles. Mork's guidance revealed itself through Gazkul's mastery of cunning brutality, his capacity for identifying and exploiting weaknesses in enemy defensive doctrine, while applying overwhelming force at precisely the right moments to achieve maximum psychological impact. His forces learned to combine traditional Ork aggression with unexpected tactical flexibility, launching devastating assaults against targets that Imperial strategists considered secure, while avoiding obvious traps that might have decimated less sophisticated opponents. This combination of divine insight and enhanced intelligence created a leader capable of matching the greatest human military minds while retaining the primal ferocity that defined Ork nature. The physical transformation that accompanied Gazkul's spiritual awakening reflected the enormous quantities of Waaagh energy flowing through his enhanced consciousness, with his body growing to massive proportions that dwarfed even veteran knobs. His skull, reinforced with crude metal plates to protect the sacred wound that connected him to the gods, became a distinctive feature that marked him as chosen among his kind. The psychic emanations radiating from his presence could be felt by other Orks at considerable distances, their subconscious recognition of his divine favor creating automatic deference that eliminated many of the challenges that typically plagued emerging warbosses. His custom mega armor, crafted by the finest mechboys on Ork using materials salvaged from countless battlefields, incorporated advanced life support systems and weapon mounts that reflected his enhanced status within Ork society. The massive power claw that replaced his right arm could crush Space Marine Terminator armor with casual ease, while integrated weapon systems provided devastating firepower at both close and medium ranges. The armor's distinctive appearance, decorated with clan symbols and trophies from defeated enemies, served to identify him on chaotic battlefields while intimidating opponents who recognized the significance of such elaborate equipment. The Second War for Armageddon provided Gazkul with the perfect opportunity to demonstrate his divine mandate to the broader Ork community, with the heavily industrialized world offering both strategic value and the kind of challenging opposition that would validate his claims to superior leadership. His initial assault caught Imperial defenders completely unprepared for the scale and coordination of his forces, with simultaneous attacks across multiple continents overwhelming garrison troops who had grown complacent after decades of relative peace. The speed of his advance prevented effective coordination between Imperial military commands, isolating individual strongholds, while his forces seized critical infrastructure and supply depots. The Siege of Hades Hive showcased Gozkul's tactical innovations, with his forces employing sophisticated urban warfare techniques that maximized their natural advantages while minimizing exposure to Imperial heavy weapons. His understanding of Hive city architecture allowed him to identify structural weaknesses that could be exploited through carefully placed demolition charges, while his coordination of multiple assault routes prevented defenders from concentrating their forces against single points of attack. The psychological warfare conducted alongside physical assaults created panic among civilian populations that complicated Imperial defensive efforts while providing additional opportunities for infiltration and sabotage. The emergence of Commissar Sebastian Yarrick as his primary opponent created a rivalry that would define both leaders' subsequent careers, with their mutual recognition of each other's capabilities elevating their conflict beyond normal military operations into something approaching personal honor combat. Gozkul's respect for Yarrick's tactical brilliance and inspirational leadership led him to spare the Commissar's life on multiple occasions, viewing him as the kind of worthy opponent that Gork and Mork intended him to face in preparation for greater conquests. This decision reflected the divine wisdom flowing through his enhanced consciousness, recognizing that defeating such a formidable enemy would require him to exceed his current capabilities and grow into the role destiny had prepared for him. The eventual Imperial victory during the Second War for Armageddon came at enormous cost, with entire regiments of Imperial Guard destroyed and multiple Space Marine companies suffering severe casualties before Gozkul's forces were finally driven from the planet's surface. However, the warboss viewed this tactical defeat as a strategic victory, having demonstrated his ability to coordinate massive military operations while testing his forces against the Imperium's finest defenders. The withdrawal to space allowed him to preserve the core of his army while spreading word of his achievements throughout the galaxy's Ork populations, attracting new followers who sought to participate in what appeared to be the beginning of a truly legendary Waaagh. The years following Armageddon saw Gozkul's influence expand across multiple sectors as his reputation attracted Orks from throughout the galaxy, their pilgrimage to join his forces creating the largest concentration of greenskins seen since the War of the Beast. His ability to maintain unity among traditionally fractious clan elements required constant attention to the competing interests and cultural traditions that defined Ork society, with his divine mandate providing the authority necessary to resolve disputes that might otherwise have fragmented his growing army. The Waaagh field generated by such massive gatherings reached unprecedented intensity, enhancing the effectiveness of all Ork equipment while creating psychic phenomena that could be detected by Imperial psychers across entire subsectors. The Third War for Armageddon demonstrated Gozkul's evolution as both a military commander and spiritual leader, with his forces showing improved coordination and tactical sophistication that reflected decades of combat experience and divine guidance. His preliminary operations involved extensive reconnaissance and intelligence gathering that allowed him to identify weaknesses in Imperial defensive preparations, while concealing his own intentions until the moment of attack. The surprise achieved during the invasion's opening phases exceeded anything accomplished during his previous campaign, with Ork forces achieving rapid territorial gains through coordinated strikes that exploited every vulnerability in Imperial doctrine. His use of diversionary attacks and feint operations created confusion among Imperial commanders who found themselves responding to threats across multiple fronts simultaneously. Their limited reserves stretched beyond effective deployment as Gozkul's forces struck at logistics centers and command facilities that had been considered secure from conventional assault. The psychological impact of seeing Ork forces operating with unprecedented coordination shattered Imperial assumptions about greenskin capabilities, while creating panic among civilian populations who had believed their world's defenses were impregnable. The personal duel between Gazkul and Commissar Yerrick during the campaign's climactic phases represented the culmination of their legendary rivalry, with both warriors demonstrating exceptional combat prowess while their respective forces engaged in desperate battles throughout Armageddon's hive cities. The warboss's enhanced size and divine favor allowed him to match Yerrick's tactical brilliance with overwhelming physical capability, their confrontation serving as a microcosm of the broader conflict between human determination and Ork aggression. The outcome of their battle, with Gazkul once again sparing his worthy opponent's life, demonstrated the spiritual growth that accompanied his military development. The current phase of Gazkul's Great Waaagh represents the fulfillment of the visions granted to him by Gork and Mork, with his forces spreading across the galaxy in search of worthy opponents who can provide the challenging combat necessary for continued growth and development. His strategic vision extends beyond simple conquest to encompass the unification of all Ork populations under his divine mandate, creating a green tide that would sweep away the decadent civilizations that have grown soft through millennia of relative peace and prosperity. The scope of his ambitions requires coordination on a galactic scale, with his enhanced consciousness capable of managing tactical situations across dozens of simultaneous campaigns while maintaining the aggressive momentum necessary to prevent factional fragmentation. His quest for worthy opponents has led him to seek out the most dangerous enemies available, from Space Marine chapter masters to Chaos warlords and Xenos champions, whose defeat would enhance his reputation while providing the kind of challenging combat that Orks require for spiritual fulfillment. Each victory adds to his legend while attracting additional followers who recognize his divine favor, creating a positive feedback loop that continuously strengthens his position within the broader Ork community. The psychological impact of his presence on battlefields across the galaxy has forced Imperial military doctrine to evolve, with new protocols developed specifically for responding to threats that operate according to his innovative tactical principles. The technological innovations emerging from Gazkul's forces reflect the enhanced Waaagh field generated by his massive following, with mechboys creating war machines that exceed anything previously achieved by Ork engineering. These advanced systems incorporate salvaged Imperial technology alongside traditional Ork components, creating hybrid platforms that combine the reliability of proven designs with the raw destructive potential that characterizes greenskin warfare. The coordination required for manufacturing such sophisticated equipment demonstrates organizational capabilities that challenge every assumption about Ork industrial capacity, while providing his forces with material advantages that complement their tactical innovations. His influence on Imperial military strategy extends far beyond the immediate threat posed by his own forces, with his tactical innovations being studied and copied by other Ork leaders throughout the galaxy. The template he has established for Waaagh organization has fundamentally altered the nature of greenskin warfare, creating more dangerous and persistent threats that require enhanced Imperial responses. Military academies throughout the Imperium now include specialized courses on Gazkul's tactics, while veteran commanders who have faced his forces provide training that prepares new officers for the realities of fighting enemies who operate according to divine guidance rather than conventional military logic. The prophetic nature of his leadership has created a religious movement within Ork society that transcends traditional clan loyalties and territorial boundaries, with his followers viewing him as the chosen instrument of Gork and Morks, rather than simply another successful warboss. This spiritual dimension adds unprecedented stability to his organization, while providing motivational factors that exceed simple desire for violence and loot. The rituals and ceremonies that have developed around his leadership serve to reinforce his divine mandate, while creating cultural bonds that unite traditionally fractious elements under a common purpose. The spiritual foundation of Ork society rests upon the worship of two primal deities whose very existence embodies the fundamental contradictions that define greenskin nature. Gork and Mork represent the twin aspects of Ork martial philosophy, their divine essence permeating every aspect of warfare and violence that drives their species forward in an endless cycle of conquest and destruction. These gods exist not as distant, abstract entities demanding reverence through prayer and ceremony, but as immediate, tangible forces whose influence manifests directly through the brutal realities of combat and the psychic emanations that flow from every Ork gathering. The theological distinction between Gork and Mork reflects the sophisticated understanding of violence that lies at the heart of Ork culture, with each deity representing a different approach to achieving dominance over enemies and rivals. Gork embodies the principle of cunning brutality, the application of intelligence and tactical thinking to maximize the effectiveness of overwhelming force. His followers understand that raw strength alone, while admirable, achieves its greatest potential when directed by strategic insight that identifies enemy weaknesses and exploits them through carefully planned applications of violence. This divine aspect manifests in Ork leaders who demonstrate the ability to coordinate complex military operations while maintaining the aggressive momentum necessary to prevent their forces from fragmenting into competing factions. Mork represents the complementary concept of brutal cunning, the use of deception and tactical flexibility to create opportunities for devastating applications of physical force. His influence guides Orks who excel at misdirection and surprise attacks, allowing them to achieve victory through clever positioning and timing rather than simple frontal assaults. The brutal aspect of this cunning ensures that any tactical advantages gained through intelligence are immediately exploited through the most violent means available, creating a synthesis of mental and physical capability that maximizes combat effectiveness while remaining true to fundamental Ork values. The apparent contradiction between these two divine aspects creates a dynamic tension that drives Ork tactical development forward, with successful leaders demonstrating mastery of both approaches while adapting their methods to specific battlefield conditions. Warriors blessed by Gork might develop elaborate battle plans that coordinate the actions of multiple units across complex terrain, using their enhanced strategic vision to identify optimal assault routes and timing. Those favored by Mork excel at improvisation and adaptation, turning apparent disadvantages into tactical opportunities through creative applications of available resources and unexpected approaches to conventional problems. The worship of these twin deities operates through fundamentally different mechanisms than the religious practices observed among human populations or other species that maintain formal theological structures. Orks do not construct temples or maintain priestly castes dedicated to interpreting divine will through scholarly study and ritual observance. Instead, their religious expression manifests directly through the acts of violence and warfare that constitute their primary cultural activities, with every battle serving as both worship service and divine communication simultaneously. The Waaagh itself represents the purest form of Ork religious expression, transforming military campaigns into massive spiritual gatherings where millions of believers demonstrate their faith through coordinated acts of destruction and conquest. The psychic energy generated by these gatherings creates a direct connection between the participants and their gods, with Gork and Mork's influence flowing through the collective consciousness of assembled warriors to enhance their combat effectiveness and maintain unity of purpose. This divine reinforcement operates independently of formal religious hierarchy or ceremonial protocol, responding instead to the genuine enthusiasm and martial spirit displayed by individual participants. The practical applications of divine favor manifest through the enhanced performance of weapons, vehicles, and equipment used by devout Orks during major campaigns. Crude weapons that should malfunction under combat stress continue operating because their wielders possess absolute faith in Gork and Mork's protective power. Ramshackle vehicles achieve impossible feats of speed and durability, because their operators believe that the gods will ensure their mechanical systems function properly. The collective faith of entire armies creates psychic fields so intense that reality itself bends to accommodate Ork expectations, transforming religious belief into tangible military advantage. The role of Gork and Mork within the broader context of warp-based phenomena reveals the sophisticated nature of Ork psychic development, with their twin gods representing stable focal points for the chaotic energies that flow through the immaterium. Unlike the Chaos gods, whose influence corrupts and transforms their followers into something fundamentally different from their original nature, the Ork deities reinforce and enhance existing greenskin characteristics without demanding fundamental changes in behavior or beliefs. This stability allows Ork society to maintain its essential character across millions of years, while benefiting from divine guidance that enhances their natural capabilities. The relationship between Gork and Mork and other warp entities reflects the unique position that Ork gods occupy within the psychic ecosystem of the galaxy. Their power derives from the collective unconscious of the most numerous and widely distributed species in known space, creating a psychic foundation that rivals or exceeds that of any competing spiritual force. The constant warfare that defines Ork existence generates enormous quantities of violent emotion and martial energy that feed directly into their god's power base, creating a self-reinforcing cycle where divine strength enhances military capability, which in turn generates more psychic energy to sustain continued divine intervention. The interaction between Ork gods and Chaos entities demonstrates the protective function that Gork and Mork serve for their followers, with their influence creating natural resistance to corruption and possession that might otherwise affect psychically active species. The brutal simplicity of Ork religious beliefs provides no opening for the subtle temptations and philosophical complexities that Chaos uses to seduce more sophisticated minds, while the immediate and tangible nature of divine favor leaves no room for doubt or spiritual uncertainty that might create vulnerabilities to demonic influence. Eldar mythological references to the Ork gods suggest that Gork and Mork achieved their current status during the ancient war in heaven, when the original Krork served as weapons in the cosmic conflict between the Old Ones and the Necrons. The psychic trauma generated by that galactic catastrophe may have crystallized the twin aspects of Ork nature into distinct divine entities, with their influence helping to maintain species cohesion even as the Krork devolved into their current form. This ancient connection explains the remarkable stability of Ork religious beliefs across vast spans of time and space, with their gods serving as unchanging anchors that preserve essential cultural elements despite the chaotic nature of greenskin society. The manifestation of Ork spiritual beliefs extends beyond formal worship to encompass a complex system of lucky charms, protective talismans, and ritual objects that serve both practical and religious functions within their military culture. These items operate through the same psychic reinforcement mechanisms that enhance Ork technology, with their effectiveness dependent on the faith and expectations of their users rather than any inherent supernatural properties. The creation and distribution of such objects represents an important aspect of Ork spiritual life that connects individual warriors to the broader divine framework, while providing tangible symbols of divine favor and protection. Lucky charms carried by individual Orks typically consist of items salvaged from significant battles or crafted from materials associated with successful military operations. Teeth pulled from defeated enemies serve as popular talismans, their presence reminding the bearer of past victories, while supposedly transferring some of the defeated foe's strength to the new owner. Pieces of metal from destroyed enemy vehicles or fortifications become protective amulets, their incorporation into personal equipment providing both psychological comfort and measurable enhancement to the wearer's combat effectiveness through psychic reinforcement. The creation of these spiritual objects follows informal traditions that vary between different clans and regions, with successful combinations of materials and construction techniques spreading through Ork populations via word of mouth and direct observation. Mechboys often incorporate lucky elements into their mechanical creations, adding teeth, bones, or scraps of significant metal to weapon systems and vehicle components. These additions serve no apparent technical function, but provide measurable improvements to equipment performance when the operators believe in their effectiveness. Warpaint represents perhaps the most visible expression of Orc spiritual beliefs, with the application of colored pigments serving multiple functions that combine religious observance with practical battlefield requirements. The colors chosen for individual warriors reflect both clan affiliation and personal spiritual preferences, with specific hues believed to provide different types of divine protection or enhancement. Red paint increases speed and aggression, blue provides good fortune and protection from harm, while yellow enhances the explosive power of weapons and ammunition. The ritual application of warpaint before major battles serves as both individual spiritual preparation and collective religious ceremony, with entire warbands participating in the decoration process while sharing stories of past victories and planning future conquests. The social bonding that occurs during these sessions reinforces unit cohesion while creating shared expectations about the upcoming battle's outcome. The psychological impact of seeing hundreds of painted warriors preparing for combat creates anticipation and excitement that feeds directly into the Waaagh field, enhancing the effectiveness of the entire force through collective spiritual energy. The pigments used for warpaint come from various sources, including natural minerals, chemical dyes, and substances extracted from defeated enemies or significant battlefields. Blood from particularly impressive opponents serves as a prized ingredient, its incorporation into paint mixtures supposedly transferring the victim's combat prowess to the wearer. Ash from burned enemy structures provides protective qualities, while powdered metals from destroyed vehicles enhance the wearer's connection to mechanical systems and weapons. Ritual combat serves as the most direct form of Orc religious expression, with formalized fighting providing opportunities for individual warriors to demonstrate their devotion to Gork and Mork, while maintaining the competitive spirit that drives their society forward. These ceremonies range from simple one-on-one duels to elaborate tournaments involving hundreds of participants, with the specific format determined by local traditions and the availability of suitable opponents. The religious significance of these events extends beyond mere entertainment to encompass genuine spiritual communication between participants and their gods. The rules governing ritual combat vary considerably between different Orc communities, but certain common elements appear throughout greenskin society regardless of clan affiliation or regional differences. Participants must demonstrate genuine commitment to violence rather than simply going through the motions of ceremonial fighting, with half-hearted efforts considered disrespectful to the gods and potentially dangerous to the spiritual health of the entire community. The combat must involve real risk of injury or death, as the gods are believed to value courage and commitment over safety and preservation. Victory in ritual combat brings enhanced status within the community, along with tangible benefits in the form of better equipment, food rations, and opportunities for advancement within the warband hierarchy. The winners are considered to have received direct divine favor, their success in battle serving as proof of their spiritual worthiness and tactical capability. This recognition creates powerful incentives for participation, while ensuring that the most capable warriors receive the resources and authority necessary to lead their communities effectively. The spiritual significance of these combat rituals extends to the broader Waaagh community, with successful participants often becoming focal points for psychic energy that enhances their subsequent battlefield performance. Warriors who demonstrate exceptional prowess in ritual combat find their equipment functioning more reliably, their tactical instincts becoming more acute, and their ability to inspire followers reaching new levels of effectiveness. This divine enhancement operates through the same mechanisms that improve Orc technology, with collective belief and expectation creating measurable improvements in individual capability. The connection between ritual combat and divine communication manifests through the enhanced intuition and tactical insight that successful participants often report following significant victories. These spiritual revelations typically take the form of tactical knowledge rather than abstract philosophical concepts, with Gork and Mork providing guidance that directly applies to upcoming military operations. The practical nature of this divine communication reflects the gods' focus on immediate combat effectiveness rather than long-term spiritual development or moral instruction. The integration of ritual combat into broader military operations ensures that religious observance remains connected to practical battlefield requirements rather than becoming an abstract exercise divorced from real-world applications. Pre-battle tournaments serve to identify the most capable warriors while building excitement and anticipation for upcoming conflicts. Post-battle celebrations allow participants to process their combat experiences while reinforcing the spiritual significance of their military achievements through formal recognition and divine acknowledgement. The thunderous advance of a fully mobilized Waaagh represents one of the most challenging military scenarios that Imperial commanders can face, requiring immediate deployment of specialized tactics and equipment designed specifically to counter the unique characteristics of Ork warfare. Unlike conventional enemies who operate according to predictable military doctrines, greenskin forces present tactical problems that defy standard Imperial Guard training protocols. Their ramshackle equipment functions through psychic reinforcement rather than sound engineering principles. Their command structure operates through personal dominance rather than formal hierarchy, and their strategic objectives often change mid-campaign based on the whims of individual leaders seeking more entertaining opponents. Imperial Guard doctrine for combating Ork invasions emphasizes the deployment of overwhelming firepower concentrated at maximum range, exploiting the technological advantages that Imperial forces maintain over crude Ork equipment while minimizing exposure to the devastating close combat capabilities that define greenskin tactical preferences. Artillery bombardments serve as the primary tool for disrupting Ork formations before they can close to effective engagement range, with massed batteries of Basilisk and Manticore platforms delivering sustained fire missions designed to break up large concentrations of enemy forces while targeting command vehicles and heavy weapons positions. The coordination required for effective artillery operations against Ork forces exceeds that necessary for engaging conventional enemies, as greenskin formations demonstrate remarkable resilience to casualties that would shatter the morale of human troops. Ork boys continue advancing through artillery barrages that kill or wound significant percentages of their number, their genetic programming preventing the panic responses that artillery is designed to create among enemy forces. Imperial gunners must therefore focus on achieving actual physical destruction of targets, rather than relying on suppressive effects or psychological impact to achieve tactical objectives. Forward observers operating with Imperial Guard units facing Ork invasions require specialized training in identifying high-value targets within the chaotic mass of advancing greenskins. Ork knobs and warbosses can be distinguished from ordinary boys through their enhanced size and distinctive equipment, making them priority targets for precision artillery strikes and sniper fire. The elimination of these leadership figures can cause temporary disruption in Ork formations, though their command structure's informal nature means that new leaders typically emerge within minutes to restore tactical cohesion. The deployment of minefields and defensive obstacles presents unique challenges when facing Ork forces, whose vehicles and equipment often demonstrate the ability to traverse terrain that would stop conventional military formations. Ork trucks and battle wagons feature crude but effective suspension systems and oversized engines that allow them to power through obstacles that would immobilize Imperial vehicles, while their operators show complete disregard for safety considerations that might deter more cautious drivers. Anti-vehicle mines must therefore be deployed in much greater concentrations than standard doctrine recommends, with multiple overlapping fields designed to ensure that even the most resilient Ork vehicles suffer critical damage. infantry portable anti-tank weapons prove particularly effective against Ork armor due to the crude construction methods and minimal armor thickness that characterize most greenskin vehicles. Lascannons and missile launchers can penetrate Ork armor at ranges that exceed the effective reach of most greenskin weapons, allowing Imperial infantry squads to engage enemy vehicles while remaining outside the range of devastating return fire. The psychological impact of watching their vehicles explode often causes Ork crews to abandon tactical caution in favor of aggressive charges that bring them within range of Imperial small arms fire. The establishment of defensive positions against Ork assaults requires careful consideration of the enemy's preference for close combat and their ability to maintain momentum despite heavy casualties. Traditional defensive doctrines that rely on fixed fortifications and prepared positions must be modified to account for the Ork tendency to view obstacles as challenges to be overcome rather than deterrents to be avoided. Defensive lines must therefore incorporate multiple fallback positions and interlocking fields of fire that can continue functioning even after enemy forces penetrate the initial perimeter. Razor wire and anti-personnel obstacles prove less effective against Ork infantry than against human opponents, as greenskin physiology allows them to push through barriers that would stop ordinary soldiers, while their crude armor provides protection against fragmentary weapons designed to exploit exposed flesh. Defensive obstacles must therefore focus on channeling enemy movement into predetermined kill zones rather than simply preventing forward progress, with carefully positioned barriers forcing Ork formations into areas covered by concentrated firepower from multiple directions. The integration of close air support into anti-Ork operations provides Imperial forces with capabilities that can match the mobility and firepower advantages that characterize greenskin warfare. Valkyrie gunships and Marauder bombers can deliver precision strikes against high-value targets while remaining outside the range of most Ork anti-aircraft weapons, though pilots must remain alert for the occasional rocket launcher or converted artillery piece pressed into air defense roles. The psychological impact of air attacks often proves as valuable as their direct military effect, as Orks frequently abandon cover to fire ineffectively at aircraft with small arms rather than maintaining tactical discipline. Combined arms operations represent the most effective approach to engaging large Ork formations, with coordinated deployment of infantry, armor, artillery, and air support creating overlapping capabilities that can respond to the unpredictable nature of greenskin tactics. Tank squadrons provide mobile firepower and protection for advancing infantry, while artillery units deliver suppressive fire against enemy concentrations beyond direct fire range. Infantry squads equipped with specialized anti-Ork equipment can engage targets that prove difficult for vehicle-mounted weapons, while providing security for supporting units against infiltration attempts. The Astra Militarum has developed specialized equipment and tactical doctrines specifically designed for anti-Ork operations, with certain regiments receiving enhanced training and equipment loadouts optimized for fighting greenskin opponents. Catachan jungle fighters demonstrate particular effectiveness against Ork forces due to their experience with unconventional warfare and their ability to operate in the chaotic environments that Ork invasions typically create. Their familiarity with improvised weapons and tactics allows them to adapt quickly to the unpredictable nature of greenskin warfare, while their enhanced physical conditioning helps them survive the brutal close combat that characterizes most engagements with Ork forces. Cadian shock troops bring disciplined firepower and tactical coordination to anti-Ork operations, their superior training allowing them to maintain unit cohesion even under the psychological pressure created by charging masses of screaming greenskins. Their standardized equipment and well-drilled tactical procedures provide the reliability necessary for coordinated operations against enemies whose own tactics can change without warning based on individual leaders' tactical preferences or simple boredom with current approaches. The Space Marine response to major Waaagh threats demonstrates the Adeptus Astartes' role as the Imperium's elite rapid response force, with entire chapters deploying to threatened sectors when conventional Imperial Guard forces prove insufficient to contain expanding Ork invasions. The enhanced capabilities of Space Marine forces allow them to engage Ork armies on more equal terms, with their superior equipment and training offsetting many of the advantages that greenskins possess over ordinary human troops. Power armor provides protection against the crude but powerful weapons favored by Ork infantry, while their enhanced physiology allows them to survive the kind of brutal close combat that typically proves fatal to Imperial Guard soldiers. Chapter tactics for engaging Ork forces emphasize mobility and precision strikes against high-value targets, with small units of Space Marines infiltrating enemy positions to eliminate leaders and destroy critical equipment. The decapitation strikes that prove effective against human opponents require modification when facing Ork forces, as their informal command structure allows new leaders to emerge rapidly following the elimination of established authority figures. Space Marine operations therefore focus on creating maximum disruption across multiple target categories simultaneously, preventing the enemy from adapting to any single tactical approach. The Ultramarines' methodical approach to warfare provides an effective template for anti-Ork operations, with their adherence to tactical doctrine creating the kind of coordinated response necessary to counter the chaotic nature of greenskin warfare. Their ability to adapt established tactical principles to specific battlefield conditions allows them to develop effective countermeasures against Ork innovations, while maintaining the disciplined execution necessary for complex multi-unit operations. The chapter's extensive experience with various enemy types provides valuable institutional knowledge about effective anti-Ork tactics that can be shared with other Imperial forces. Imperial Fist's expertise in defensive warfare proves particularly valuable during Ork sieges, with their understanding of fortification design and defensive tactics helping to create strongpoints that can withstand the kind of sustained assault that characterizes major Waaagh operations. Their ability to coordinate the defense of multiple positions simultaneously allows them to maintain cohesive resistance even when facing the overwhelming numbers that Ork invasions typically deploy. The chapter's tradition of last stand defenses provides the psychological foundation necessary for holding critical positions against seemingly impossible odds. The Blood Angels' preference for aggressive assault tactics creates natural synergy with anti-Ork operations, as their willingness to engage enemies in close combat allows them to exploit the tactical opportunities created by Ork recklessness and poor coordination. Their enhanced speed and combat reflexes provide significant advantages in the kind of fluid, high-intensity engagements that characterize most battles with greenskin forces, while their experience with chaotic melee combat helps them maintain tactical awareness even in the midst of massive multi-unit brawls. Space Marine Terminator squads prove exceptionally effective against Ork heavy infantry and vehicle crews, with their tactical dreadnought armor providing protection against the kind of heavy weapons that Orks deploy against hardened targets. Storm bolters deliver devastating firepower against lightly armored Ork infantry, while power fists and thunder hammers can destroy even the largest Ork vehicles through direct assault. The psychological impact of Terminators advancing steadily through enemy fire while delivering precise return fire often causes Ork formations to abandon tactical discipline in favor of desperate charges that expose them to concentrated firepower from supporting units. The Adeptus Mechanicus has developed numerous specialized weapons and equipment systems designed specifically for combating Ork technology and the psychic fields that enhance its effectiveness. Null field generators create zones of psychic interference that disrupt the Waaagh energy responsible for making Ork equipment function beyond its apparent mechanical limitations. These devices prove particularly effective against Ork vehicles and heavy weapons, causing systems that should work according to greenskin expectations to malfunction or cease functioning entirely. Cogitator-guided targeting systems help Imperial forces identify and prioritize threats within the chaotic mass of advancing Ork formations, with machine spirits capable of processing tactical information faster than human operators can analyze the constantly changing battlefield situation. These systems excel at tracking multiple targets simultaneously while calculating optimal firing solutions for various weapon types, allowing Imperial forces to maximize their firepower efficiency against enemies who rarely maintain predictable movement patterns. Specialized ammunition types developed by Forge Worlds include armor-piercing rounds designed to penetrate the thick metal plates that protect Ork vehicles and heavy infantry, while fragmentary warheads create devastating effects against the lightly armored Boyz that make up the majority of most Waaagh forces. Incendiary rounds prove particularly effective against Ork equipment, as their crude construction often incorporates flammable materials that can cause catastrophic secondary explosions when ignited by weapons fire. The development of anti-psychic countermeasures represents one of the most challenging aspects of creating effective anti-Ork technology, as the Waaagh field operates through mechanisms that conventional Imperial science struggles to understand or predict. Psychic dampening fields can reduce the effectiveness of Ork equipment within limited areas, but the power requirements for maintaining such fields over tactically significant areas exceed the capacity of most portable generators. Research continues into more efficient methods of disrupting greenskin psychic phenomena, with some Forge Worlds experimenting with crystalline matrices and exotic materials that might provide enhanced interference capabilities. The fundamental challenge of completely eliminating Ork populations stems from their unique reproductive biology, which ensures that even successful extermination campaigns leave behind microscopic spores that can eventually regenerate entire greenskin ecosystems. Imperial exterminatus protocols exist partly because conventional cleansing operations often fail to prevent long-term Ork resurgence, with worlds thought purged erupting in new Waaghs decades or centuries later as dormant spores finally reach critical mass. The resilience of these reproductive cells to extreme environmental conditions makes them nearly impossible to eliminate through conventional sterilization procedures. Atmospheric burning using incendiary weapons can destroy surface vegetation and organic matter that supports Ork spore development, but subsurface contamination often survives such treatments to begin the regeneration process once environmental conditions stabilize. Chemical sterilization requires the application of toxic agents in concentrations that would render worlds uninhabitable for human colonization, while radiation bombardment creates long-term contamination that may prove as dangerous to Imperial forces as to any surviving Ork spores. The Ordo Xenos has developed specialized protocols for identifying and monitoring worlds that may harbor dormant Ork populations, with Inquisitors maintaining surveillance networks designed to detect the early signs of greenskin resurgence before new Waaghs can achieve dangerous momentum. These monitoring systems focus on identifying the distinctive fungal growths and ecosystem changes that precede the emergence of new Ork populations, allowing Imperial forces to intervene during the vulnerable early stages of spore development rather than waiting until full military formations have developed. The economic and logistical costs of maintaining effective anti-Ork defenses throughout Imperial space exceed the capacity of most sector governments, forcing difficult decisions about resource allocation and defensive priorities. Heavily populated industrial worlds receive comprehensive protection through multiple layers of orbital defenses, garrison forces, and early warning systems, while frontier settlements often rely on minimal defenses supplemented by rapid response forces that may arrive too late to prevent significant casualties and infrastructure damage. The psychological impact of persistent Ork threats on Imperial civilian populations creates additional challenges for planetary governors and military commanders, with constant vigilance requirements straining social cohesion and economic productivity. Worlds that have experienced major Ork invasions often develop cultural patterns focused on military preparedness and survival skills, creating populations that are more resilient to future attacks but less efficient at peaceful economic activities that support broader imperial prosperity. The galaxy burns with the fires of countless conflicts as the 41st millennium draws to its bloody conclusion, yet no threat remains as persistent or unpredictable as the endless green tide that sweeps across star systems with mechanical regularity. The current state of Ork populations represents a crisis of unprecedented scale, with multiple major Waaaghs operating simultaneously across different sectors, while countless smaller invasions gnaw at imperial defenses like a plague of metallic locusts. The sheer number of active greenskin campaigns has stretched imperial military resources beyond their sustainable limits, forcing difficult decisions about which worlds can be defended and which must be abandoned to the advancing horde. Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka's Great Waaagh continues its rampage through the segmentum solar, having grown to proportions that dwarf even his previous campaigns through the systematic absorption of smaller warbands and the attraction of pilgrims from across the galaxy. Intelligence reports suggest his forces now number in the tens of millions, with new arrivals swelling his ranks daily as word of his victories spreads through informal Ork communication networks. His tactical innovations have influenced greenskin warfare throughout Imperial space, with other warbosses attempting to replicate his coordination techniques and combined arms approaches despite lacking his divine guidance and enhanced strategic capabilities. The psychological impact of Thraka's continued success extends far beyond the immediate military threat posed by his forces, creating a rallying point for Ork populations that had previously remained fragmented into competing local factions. His reputation as the chosen prophet of Gork and Mork has elevated him beyond simple military leadership to become a spiritual figurehead whose very existence validates Ork beliefs about their destiny as the galaxy's ultimate conquerors. This transformation from warlord to religious icon has created unprecedented unity among traditionally fractious clan elements, with ancient rivalries temporarily set aside in favor of participating in what many Orks view as the fulfillment of their species' evolutionary purpose. Warboss Grimskull's operations in the Eastern Fringe have demonstrated similar organizational sophistication, with his forces conducting coordinated campaigns against Tau expansion efforts while simultaneously engaging Imperial Navy patrol squadrons and Tyranid splinter fleets. His ability to maintain operational effectiveness against multiple enemy types reflects the enhanced tactical thinking that characterizes the current generation of Ork leaders, their capabilities elevated through exposure to the intense Waaagh fields generated by unprecedented concentrations of greenskin populations. The multi-front nature of his campaigns has created tactical complexities that exceed anything previously documented in Imperial military archives, with his forces adapting their equipment and tactics to exploit specific weaknesses in each enemy type they encounter. The emergence of Waaagh Scarjaw in the Segmentum Obscurus has created additional strain on Imperial defensive capabilities, with his forces demonstrating unusual expertise in void warfare that allows them to challenge Imperial Navy squadrons on relatively equal terms. His integration of captured Imperial vessels into ramshackle but effective fleet formations has provided his Waaagh with strategic mobility that enables rapid redeployment between target systems, while avoiding the concentrated Imperial responses that have historically contained Ork expansion. The technological innovations emerging from his mechboy workshops include hybrid weapon systems that combine Ork engineering with salvaged Imperial components, creating firepower capabilities that approach those of proper Imperial warships despite their crude construction methods. Warboss Urgok's campaigns in the Segmentum Tempestus have focused on siege warfare against heavily fortified Imperial positions, with his forces demonstrating unprecedented patience and methodical planning in their assault operations. His development of specialized siege equipment includes massive drilling machines capable of penetrating fortress walls and underground tunnel networks that allow his forces to bypass surface defenses entirely. The success of these innovative approaches has attracted attention from other Ork leaders seeking to replicate his techniques, creating a gradual evolution in greenskin siege doctrine that threatens to obsolete current Imperial fortification designs. The Great Rift's violent emergence has fundamentally altered the strategic landscape facing both Imperial forces and Ork populations, creating new opportunities for greenskin expansion while simultaneously presenting unprecedented challenges to traditional Waaagh organization. The massive warp storms that now bisect the galaxy have disrupted established travel routes and communication networks, isolating Imperial worlds that previously relied on mutual support arrangements, while creating pockets of space where Ork forces can operate without immediate Imperial response. The chaotic nature of warp travel in the vicinity of the Great Rift has actually benefited Ork forces, whose ramshackle vessels and crude navigation systems prove more adaptable to unstable conditions than the sophisticated Imperial ships that require precise calculations for safe passage. The psychic turbulence generated by the Great Rift has created unprecedented enhancement effects for Waaagh fields operating in its vicinity, with Ork equipment demonstrating performance improvements that exceed anything previously documented by Imperial observers. Weapons that should malfunction under normal circumstances achieve remarkable accuracy and penetration, while vehicles demonstrate speed and durability that defies their apparent mechanical limitations. These enhancement effects appear to strengthen with proximity to major warp disturbances, suggesting that the chaotic energies bleeding through reality's fabric provide additional power sources for the psychic phenomena that govern Ork technology. The isolation of Imperial worlds on the dark side of the Great Rift has created numerous opportunities for Ork expansion into territories that were previously too well defended to assault directly. Entire subsectors have fallen to greenskin invasions simply because Imperial reinforcements cannot navigate the warp storms necessary to provide assistance, while local defense forces lack the resources necessary to contain major Waaagh operations without external support. The cumulative effect of these isolated conquests has been the establishment of numerous Ork-controlled regions that serve as breeding grounds for future invasions, while providing secure bases for existing Waaagh operations. Speed freak culture has experienced explosive growth throughout Ork society, with the mobility advantages provided by fast vehicles becoming increasingly important for navigating the unstable strategic environment created by the Great Rift. These specialized warbands focus on hit-and-run tactics that exploit their superior speed to avoid prolonged engagements while striking at vulnerable targets throughout Imperial space. Their red-painted vehicles achieve remarkable performance through enhanced Waaagh field effects, with some reported achieving speeds that approach those of Imperial aircraft despite their ground-based propulsion systems. The technological innovations emerging from speed freak workshops demonstrate remarkable creativity in adapting salvaged components for maximum velocity, with Boyz developing engine modifications and aerodynamic enhancements that push Ork vehicle performance beyond anything previously achieved. Nitrous injection systems salvaged from Imperial racing circuits provide temporary speed boosts that allow Ork vehicles to outrun pursuing forces, while crude but effective guidance systems enable high-speed navigation through terrain that would challenge even skilled Imperial pilots. The psychological impact of these high-velocity assaults often proves as valuable as their direct military effect, with enemy forces frequently panicking when confronted by masses of screaming Orks approaching at impossible speeds. The expansion of speed freak influence has created new tactical doctrines that emphasize mobility over traditional Ork preferences for direct confrontation, with entire Waaghs adopting fast attack principles that allow them to strike across multiple star systems before Imperial forces can coordinate effective responses. This evolution represents a significant departure from historical orc warfare patterns, suggesting that the species retains sufficient adaptability to modify their fundamental tactical approaches when environmental pressures demand such changes. Feral orc populations have proliferated throughout regions affected by the Great Rift's emergence, with primitive greenskin societies developing on worlds where the breakdown of imperial authority has created power vacuums that allow orc spores to develop without interference. These populations typically lack the advanced technology and organizational sophistication of their civilized counterparts, but their numbers and primitive cunning make them significant threats to isolated imperial settlements and trade routes. The harsh environmental conditions that characterize many of these worlds have created particularly tough and resourceful orc variants, whose combat effectiveness often exceeds that of their more technologically advanced cousins. The tribal warfare that defines feral orc society serves as a constant training ground that produces exceptionally capable warriors, with survivors of these brutal conflicts demonstrating combat skills that rival those of veteran space marines. Their primitive weapons, crafted from local materials and salvaged metal, prove surprisingly effective against modern imperial equipment due to the enhanced Waaagh field effects generated by their absolute faith in traditional combat methods. The ritual combat and spiritual practices maintained by these populations often demonstrate stronger connections to Gork and Mork than those observed among more civilized orc societies, suggesting that technological advancement may actually weaken certain aspects of greenskin religious expression. The discovery of several feral orc worlds where the local populations have developed unusual characteristics has raised concerns among imperial xenobiologists about potential evolutionary pressures that might be affecting greenskin development. Some populations demonstrate enhanced size and intelligence that approaches the legendary proportions of ancient Krork, while others have developed specialized adaptations to specific environmental conditions that suggest remarkable genetic flexibility. These observations have led to speculation that extreme environmental pressures or exposure to warp phenomena might trigger latent genetic programs that could restore some of the capabilities that orcs have lost through millions of years of devolution. The potential emergence of Krork-level intelligence among certain orc populations represents perhaps the most terrifying prospect facing imperial strategists, with intelligence reports suggesting that some warbosses have begun demonstrating cognitive capabilities that far exceed normal greenskin limitations. These exceptional individuals show strategic thinking that operates on timescales measured in decades rather than the immediate tactical focus that typically characterizes orc planning, while their ability to coordinate complex multi-system operations rivals that of the greatest human military minds. The technological sophistication emerging from their forces includes weapons and equipment that approach Imperial Guard standards despite being constructed from salvaged materials using crude manufacturing techniques. The Beast's legacy continues to influence modern orc development, with genetic analysis suggesting that his exceptional characteristics have been passed down through spore-based reproduction to create bloodlines with enhanced potential for similar development. These genetic throwbacks appear randomly throughout orc populations, their emergence unpredictable, but their impact invariably significant when they achieve positions of leadership. The combination of enhanced physical capabilities and superior intelligence that characterizes these individuals creates natural advantages that allow them to dominate normal orcs while attracting followers from vast distances who recognize their exceptional nature. Research conducted by the Ordo Xenos has identified several potential triggers that might accelerate the emergence of Krork-level characteristics, including exposure to intense warp phenomena, prolonged warfare against technologically superior opponents, and the psychic pressure generated by extremely large Waaagh gatherings. The interaction between these factors appears to create conditions that activate dormant genetic programs, though the specific mechanisms involved remain poorly understood despite extensive study. The implications of this research suggest that the current chaotic state of the galaxy may be creating ideal conditions for widespread orc evolution, with potentially catastrophic consequences for all other species. The role of orcs as a constant galactic threat ensures perpetual warfare that prevents any single faction from achieving the stability necessary for long-term dominance, creating a strategic balance that may actually serve the interests of galactic stability despite its immediate destructive effects. Their presence forces continuous military innovation and preparedness among other species, while providing a common enemy that occasionally unites otherwise hostile factions against shared threats. The economic impact of constant anti-orc operations drives technological development and industrial production throughout imperial space, creating employment and purpose for billions of citizens who might otherwise lack productive occupations. The psychological effects of persistent orc threats on human populations have created cultural adaptations that emphasize martial virtues and collective defense, strengthening imperial societies' resistance to other forms of corruption and subversion. Worlds that have survived major Waaagh invasions often develop strong traditions of military service and community cooperation that serve them well in subsequent crises, while the shared experience of facing seemingly impossible odds creates social bonds that transcend normal class and regional divisions. The constant vigilance required to detect and respond to orc threats maintains the aggressive spirit necessary for imperial expansion, while preventing the complacency that has historically led to civilizational decline. The symbiotic relationship between orcs and the broader galactic ecosystem ensures their continued survival regardless of temporary setbacks or tactical defeats, with their reproductive biology making complete extinction virtually impossible through conventional military means. Their adaptation to various environmental conditions and technological levels allows them to thrive in circumstances that would destroy other species, while their fundamental drives toward violence and expansion ensure they will continue seeking new conflicts regardless of previous losses. The genetic programming that defines their existence operates independently of conscious decision-making, creating behavioral patterns that persist across generations without requiring cultural transmission or institutional preservation. The eternal nature of the Waaagh phenomenon reflects the original design parameters that the Old Ones encoded into their core creations, with the species serving as a self-perpetuating weapon system that continues operating millions of years after its creator's extinction. The devolution that transformed the sophisticated Krork into modern orcs has not eliminated the fundamental drives and capabilities that made them effective weapons, but rather simplified them into forms that can survive and reproduce without requiring external support or guidance. This evolutionary adaptation has created a species that embodies pure warfare in its most distilled form, existing solely to fight and spread conflict throughout the galaxy. As the 41st millennium draws toward its close and new threats emerge from the darkness between the stars, the green tide continues its eternal advance across countless worlds. The Great Rift has opened new avenues for expansion while creating conditions that may accelerate orc evolution toward their original Krork specifications. Speed Freak Kultur spreads its philosophy of velocity and aggression throughout greenskin society, while feral orc populations multiply in the shadows of collapsed civilizations. The potential return of Krork-level intelligence looms as a threat that could reshape the balance of galactic power, transforming the orcs from a manageable nuisance into an existential danger to all other life forms. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, and the orcs would have it no other way. They are the eternal enemy, the constant threat, the green tide that ensures the galaxy will never know peace. Born from the ashes of the war in heaven and tempered by millions of years of endless conflict, they represent the ultimate expression of warfare as a way of life. Whether serving as crude raiders or sophisticated conquerors, whether led by simple warbosses or divinely inspired prophets, they remain true to their fundamental nature as the galaxy's most persistent and adaptable warriors. The Waaagh is eternal, and as long as there are worlds to conquer and enemies to fight, The thunder of Ork engines will echo across the stars, proclaiming their simple truth, that in a universe defined by violence, they are the ultimate victors.